If you've been thinking about getting serious with your money, like actually serious, now's the time. The Motley Fool is offering new members 50% off their iconic stock recommendation service, Stock Advisor. This is the same service that's crushed the market with recommendations that have returned 1,057% since inception, compared to the S&P 500's 180% over that same period. This isn't guesswork. The Motley Fool has a track record of finding companies before they become household names. So if you want to invest smarter and you like saving money while doing it, go to Fool.com/listen to claim your 50% off discount off a 1-year term of Stock Advisor. Again, that's Fool.com/listen. Returns of 1,057% are from the Motley Fool's product Stock Advisor and measured against S&P 500 returns of 180% as of July 10th, 2025. Past performance is not an indicator of future results. All investing involves a risk of loss. Individual investment results may vary.
Do you love movies? So do I. What's up, y'all? It's KB, and I love movies. Inviting you to listen to The Conversation, a film podcast where passion meets perspective and opinion. From the old school to the new, I invite a guest on to discuss the movies that thrill us, challenge us, break our hearts, or even blow our minds. There's always new episodes dropping wherever you get your podcasts. So join the conversation. We don't just watch movies. We love talking about them too. The Conversation with KB Loves Movies, a part of Someone's Favorite Productions podcast network.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, heroes in a half shell, turtle power, they're the world's most fearsome fighting team.
We're really hip.
They're heroes in the half shell, and they're green.
Hey, get a grip.
When the evil Shredder attacks, these turtles...
Howbunga dudes, and welcome to the Kulturecast. I'm Chris Stachiw, editor-in-chief of Culture Shock.
I'm senior staff writer Michael Swan.
And I'm John Lein, and if I subtract the cosine from the inverted integer, then I can take the flangular and put that here.
And man, you know what? I love being a turtle. So if you can't tell, guys, this week is our Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles franchise Kulturecast. We have a boatload of guests. From the first Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles film, we have Leif Tilden, who played Donatello. He also played Donatello in the second film. From the second film, Secret of the Ooze, we have Ernie Reyes Jr., who played Keno. We also have Ken Scott, who played Raphael in the suit. And he was also in the first film as a foot soldier and did some in-suit work on the first film. We also have Mark Ginther, who played Razor in the suit. And from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3, we have David Allen Frazier, who was in the suit as Michelangelo. And we also have Gord Robertson, who was the puppeteer for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2 and the chief puppeteer on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3. So those were pretty awesome interviews. I'm looking forward to hearing them. So let's get right into it. Kind of right off the bat, what, Swan and John, what are y'all's memories of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles?
All of them, or just the first three?
Just the ones that came out when we were kids, or anything. Anything in general with the Turtles.
I saw them. I grew up watching these movies. I played the Super Nintendo Mortal Kombat style fighter game that was based on these guys. I grew up loving TMNT. Like it was my jam.
I mean, it's one of the things from my childhood that, you know, I always remember. I mean, you could make the joke that Turtles existed to sell turtle toys, but I don't give a shit.
I don't know if I ever saw any of them in theaters. I don't remember that specifically. I mean, when the first one came out, I would have been 1, so I definitely didn't see that one. But I remember watching them a lot as a kid, and as I grew older, I periodically do like marathons of the 3 live action ones. And I'll just like order a large pizza and spend an entire day watching Ninja Turtles and eating pizza.
What kind of pizza is that? Is that Pizza Hut pizza or Domino's pizza?
I order TJ's now from Denton because it's better than Domino's or Pizza Hut.
But the Turtles, they seem to have varying tastes in pizza.
Well, that seems to vary based on who can pay them.
Who pays more? Who paid the Turtles more to plug pizza?
Mm-hmm.
This is something I grew up with. Like John said, I don't think I saw any of the movies in theaters because I would have been non-existent, I think, when the first one came out.
You would.
I guess I was like,
you a baby!
Babies! I was a baby! It was like a month old. I was like a month old when this first one came. Or I guess, no, I was not born when the first one came out.
The three original live actions came out in 90, 91, and 93.
Yeah.
So
I was not born when the first one came out. But I mean, when I was a little kid, I remember having like a puzzle, like a huge floor puzzle for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3. I do remember liking the second one more as a kid because it's more for kids than the other ones. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that, it gets some shit because it's more for kids, but
Well,
so what?
that's because the first draft of the first movie was written before the cartoon came out.
Yeah.
So it was supposed to be a straight ripoff from the comics, which are adult and gory, and the turtles kill people, and Splinter trains them solely to get revenge against the Shredder who killed his master. And
at one point, one of them loses like a hand. I think Raphael loses a hand. One of them loses an eye.
And there's like a giant leech in one of the earlier comic books that sucked on to Donatello and got the mutagen out of his blood, and so turned into a giant life-sucking monster that they have to fight. The comic books are adult and weird.
Well, and I mean, they've returned to their roots in a way because I think I want to say it was either the last issue or the issue before that of the most recent comics, Donatello dies.
Does he?
He gets sledgehammered to death by Bebop and Rocksteady.
Wow.
Which, by the way, that's like a total downer. But Bebop and Rocksteady kill him with a sledgehammer. And they're like, I didn't think it would look like that on the inside, which just fucks my childhood. It's just my childhood is just stepped on. Which is surprising considering how often comic book characters die. If you think about it. So
did they bring Donnie back? Oh, it hasn't been that long.
It hasn't been a year yet. Like with Captain America or whatnot. So, let's just start. Let's start from the beginning. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 1990, the first one. Now we have to say Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 1990 because of the Michael Bay film. Thanks.
Right.
What did you guys think of the first big screen adaptation of the Turtles?
I thought it was funny, cheesy, still worth watching. I think it's got some serious nostalgia factor for me because I remember having these on VHS, playing video games based on the characters. These, not just the first one, but all three of the live actions, that was literally my childhood before 2000. Let's see, because I was in California at the time, and all four Turtles definitely have a California vibe to them, Beach Boy bum type of a thing. So I kind of I bought into that. So pizza and rock out, dude, and hang 10 or whatever, but
Cowabunga!
Yeah, straight up, cowabunga. So,
which begs the question as to how the Turtles ever became that way, since they live in New York.
Yeah, it's weird.
Television?
Yeah, I'm assuming it's television. It's
I guess.
Yeah.
What about you, John?
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, it's fine.
Fuck you, Swan. Your opinion is over with. No, you were saying. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, yeah, my childhood in a nutshell. Well, in a turtle shell, actually.
Heroes in a half shell. Turtle power. Did you guys know that they're the world's most fearsome fighting team?
They are the world's most
Did you know that they're heroes
team.
in a half shell? And they're green?
When the evil Shredder attacks.
Those they do not cut them no slack. You were saying, John?
Oh, God. We're such nerds.
Hello, my name is Kevin Tudor, and I'm one of the three hosts of Almost Major, a film podcast dissecting many major indie studios and the films they release. Every week, myself, Charlie Nash, and Bryden Doyle discuss overlooked, forgotten, or bona fide classic indie films via studio-specific miniseries. We've previously covered numerous films from Artisan Entertainment, Lionsgate Films, and New Line Cinema. Titles including The Blair Witch Project, American Psycho, Dogville, But I'm a Cheerleader, Saw, Requiem for a Dream, and Ringmaster. You know, the Jerry Springer film. Anyways, we have a fun time every week, and we hope you will join us. Subscribe to Almost Major wherever you get your podcasts. Now proudly a part of the Someone's Favorite Productions podcast network.
We are fucking Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle nerds.
Oh, God. Okay, so I like the first one. It's not my favorite of the three live-action old school ones. It's definitely better, I think, than the animated one and Michael Bay's, and it's definitely worth watching. It has so many odd little, like, people in the background. I mean, Sam Rockwell plays, like, the head Foot Clan thug, and he's, like, walking kids through the Foot Clan base. And then you've got, at one point, Michael Jai White is, like, just a Foot Clan dude in the background, and we talked about him when we watched Spawn. Just a lot of things like that. There's a bunch of stuff in the back. Skeet Ulrich is in it. It's just, I feel like it's a 90s movie, and it's sort of, it embodies what the 90s were to me as a kid, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I hadn't watched the first one in a long time. I honestly don't remember ever watching it as an adult. Because TMNT 2 is my favorite, and I've seen that one millions of times. So I don't, it's not that the first one, it was just one that I never watched because I think I was always kind of put off as a kid by the dark tone of it, and it wasn't just as funny. I mean, the second one is just like insanely funny.
Right.
And the third one is even funnier.
Right. And the first one has that stuff with like Raphael getting like kicked
Killed?
into a coma.
Yeah. But the first one has a lot of really cool stuff like Casey Jones.
Played by Elias Koteas.
Yeah. Who, by the way...
Discount Al Pacino.
I mean, I always think Elias Koteas is just... He's awesome character actor guy. I wouldn't even say discount Al Pacino.
I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like he's pretty good at being himself. Like his own thing.
To me, the entire time in the first one, anytime he talked, it seemed to be like kind of akin to Al Pacino in Scarface, kind of.
He had a dog.
Kind of. He just had like the timbre of his voice.
I mean, that's like New Yorker, right?
Yeah, I guess so. Except fucking doesn't Scarface take place in Miami?
Yeah. I mean, let's kind of get into it. So, the guys in the suit this time around are Leif Tilden, Josh Paez, Mike Michelin-Sisti, and David Foreman. Leif Tilden is Donatello, and I got a chance to talk with him, so we'll play that interview, and then when we get back, we'll talk about the Turtles, the first time I get to see him. How did you get involved with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles kind of franchise, I guess?
Well, I had a tryout in New York City back in 1989, I believe it was. I was living in Chinatown at the time, and I heard about this tryout, and I was actually already a fan of underground comics at that time. Like real obscure, crazy comic books. I was a collector of comic books when I was a kid as well. I don't know if you remember Rom, the Space Knight. Was like one of my favorites. So, and there was in the East Village there was like an underground comic book store that I used to frequent, and so I thought it was like an interesting, I wasn't really pursuing acting at the time, but I heard about this thing and. And then it seemed pretty, rad, at the time. And, went on the tryout. But I remember, getting the script. It was completely different than what I thought the Ninja Turtles were. The Ninja Turtles, if you remember, they were vicious.
Right. No, the tone of the comic book is way different than the tone of any of the movies have been.
Yeah, I mean, the original comic book, before, Archie Comics got a hold of it, Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird sold 50% of the rights to Archie Comics, and that's when the Turtles took a different turn from this sort of hardcore vigilante, foursome, where they all had red bandanas. And it was black and white, and the only thing that was red was like the blood splatter and the red bandanas. And then Archie Comics took it, and then they gave them all different colors, purple, orange, blue, and then they gave them these personalities, and that's what you see in the movie. So But it's still, I think it still had sort of the, there's still like a vibe there that was interesting, that I think like the core of that idea was still in place. It just wasn't what I was expecting. I thought it was like, it's going to be like this hardcore, which I still believe they should do. They should come out with the Turtles. I think they should do a real, like,
true to form Turtles movie.
Yeah, I think that would be amazing if they did like a true to form, like based on the original idea that they were just like these vicious, do it like do it in the same vein as like, the Warriors, the movie The Warriors,
Right.
You know what I mean?
But to be fair, not as many little kids can go see a movie like that, right?
I guess. Yeah. I mean that would be the sacrifice, I guess.
Yeah.
That's probably why no one has done it.
Yeah.
But not every movie is for kids.
Oh,
not every.
That's a really interesting conversation to have, for sure.
Well, that's a politically correct statement, I guess.
Well, I totally agree.
I don't have kids, so I'm always asking my friends, would you bring this movie, would you bring your kids to this movie? And they go, absolutely, you talk about movies and they're like, absolutely not, like, really? Like I recently saw Chappie, and I thought that movie was horrible. And I wouldn't bring my kids to see Chappie, not because it was violent, but just because it was, like it was just, take up too many precious brain cells.
Right. No, I gotcha.
And I love that director's first movie, District 9, but Chappie was like, and they made that movie, it seemed like they made that film in sort of a vein for kids. Did you see Chappie?
So that's the thing. I saw the original trailer for it, and it was trying to be billed as like a family robot movie. And then at some point down the road, it became kind of like an ass-kicking robot movie, which I never understood.
It's horrible. I mean, it's a horrible story. It's badly. It's like really like horribly executed. It's Short Circuit meets RoboCop, and those are better movies by far. And I mean, especially since they completely ripped off RoboCop. I mean, in so many different ways. There's so many elements of that. It's exactly RoboCop, and Short Circuit. As you remember, this guy Fisher Stevens was the actor that plays this, guy from India who has this robot. They have the same thing.
Right.
It's like crazy, like ridiculous. So it's very childlike. But then what's woven into this film is this, like, really, like, these violent scenes that go on, just like, and not done with this sort of flair, like, you remember Django, Quentin Tarantino's Django, like, the gratuitous violence in that was comedic, so it's kind of hilarious,
Yeah.
It gave it some sort of, like, personality. This is just, like, violent. So, I can see how, I feel like you could do a Ninja Turtles that sort of has that, that sort of, you could do that like Quentin Tarantino did Django, you sort of comedic, surreal, ironic take on the violence part of it,
Yeah. Well, I mean, even in the more recent comics, they've kind of returned back to that dark aspect of it, because in I don't know if you know this, in one of the more recent comics, Donatello gets killed.
Yeah, I heard about that.
Yeah.
So I mean, is he seriously killed?
Yeah, like I want to say Bebop and Rocksteady kill him with a sledgehammer.
So
I mean, he's gonna come back because it's a comic book, but he's dead for the time being.
It's like when they came out with the Death of Superman. Do you remember that series?
Yeah, or Death of Captain America.
Yeah, Death of Superman's amazing. You should see this comic book. It's incredible. Everyone who listens to the podcast should get Death of Superman. Look it up.
Yeah.
It's great. crazy. The artwork's amazing in it. Yeah, but anyway, I just, I was a fan of the Ninja Turtles and, but it went from sort of what it was about and the content. My experience became more about the making of, my experience, the process was so fascinating. That took over,
Right.
The process of making these things come alive was pretty intense,
So what was, I guess, how kind of involved were you in the process of making the suits?
Well, I wasn't involved in making them, but I was involved. I mean, my involvement. Well, I mean, in some way, yeah. I mean, we did a body cast,
right?
Because they built the suits around our form and our physical body, so it'd be form fitting. They sent us to London, and, a few times to do these fittings. And, we did film tests, camera tests. We moved in the suits to see not just how comfortable they were, but how they responded to movement and action and things like that, so, you're working, at the Jim Henson Creature Shop, who's the name of the character in Never Ending Story, the flying dog?
Oh, jeez.
We should be shot for not knowing his name. But like that head was there, Yoda is there. You're working with like these people that made creatures and characters from like the Dark Crystal and those are the Henson movies that I loved, with like Labyrinth and the Dark Crystal and Yoda, Star Wars. I mean,
right,
crazy. So that was amazing because like it was like these are like puppeteer makers. The NASA version of puppeteering, it felt like you're in NASA for people making animatronic characters and puppets. And, it's very high tech and very creative, amazing sculptors, people working with clay and mechanical servos and drawings and renderings and, it's just crazy, So I was in awe. And you're working with these puppeteers who like worked on the Muppet Show and Dark Crystal and,
Right.
It was kind of, Dark Crystal was kind of like Cirque du Soleil in a lot of ways of how they performed a lot of those creatures. Some of these creatures were like on stilts, just the way they brought those creatures to life back then, pre-CGI. It was a suspension of disbelief, which I think is sort of the magic of those movies,
Right.
I think it's the one, the magic of Yoda is a great example. You could say this for the Turtles too, but Yoda specifically, that Yoda's a puppet. Even if you're a kid,
right.
There's some sort of awareness that, that Yoda doesn't really exist. But there's a suspension of disbelief that he could exist, that he exists right now. He exists while we're watching this film. He exists in spirit. He exists in this sort of innocent awe, of creation, and that's amazing. I think you lose that. I'm not anti-CGI. I think there's a place for it. I think there's, obviously, and it has a lot to do with how it's performed. And I guess with motion capture, you can give CGI some sort of organic quality to it, But I think it's like apples and oranges. I just think when we're watching the Ninja Turtles movie and like characters like Yoda, Dark Crystal, what the Henson Creature Shop was able to do, as other people were able to do. There's a lot of companies that, held the people that did all the creatures for Hellboy. And I mean, there's lots of, Stan Winston and Rick Baker when they made those gorillas, there's something beautiful about, that, those characters that are you know that they're being performed.
Right.
You know, like watching, a marionette show or even the Muppet Show. You know, they're puppets. But it's the brilliance of how they're being performed, you know.
Right.
It's something you lose. I think you lose that in CGI. I don't, that's just a personal...
CGI is kind of a crutch, in my opinion.
But for millions of people, it doesn't matter to them.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. Like, I saw the recent Ninja Turtles movie, and I was entertained. Like, I had fun. I thought it was, well done. And it was, it was fun. It was cool. I was a little startled by their faces at the first. You got to get into it. You get used to it. And it's fun. It's high flying. It's, hundreds of millions of dollars of action fun, It's like, and it's great, it is what it is. It's different. You can't really compare. It's just, and I think for a lot of people, they were entertained by it. I was entertained by it. But I just personally there's something missing, Like I really felt that with the next series of Star Wars. Like I totally missed the original Yoda.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't care that I saw 3D Yoda bouncing off the walls and fighting. To me that was, when you're working within a restriction as well, you become resourceful as a performer with that puppet and what they came up in terms of the magic of Yoda, knowing that you couldn't see his feet and actually fight. He did other things. But this is a different time, it's a different world now.
Yeah.
So,
everybody wants to see everything all the time,
I guess they want, someone was telling me the other day, I heard someone say, I saw this on a television show, it was like a line, someone said TMI, and then they say, well, too much information, like that phrase is, is not relevant anymore.
Right.
Because everybody has all the information now.
Yeah.
People are gathering information when they have dinner together. I just go to school. No, kids are hanging out, and they're just like looking down at their iPads and their iPhones, and they're talking to each other. People are going on dates, and they're on their iPhones, like they're on their leash. And it seemed like 5 years ago. It didn't seem like so long ago where I would have conversations with people and say, "Oh yeah, that's so rude. It's like you're hanging out, you're having dinner, and someone gets on their phone and texts somebody. It's so rude." And now it's not considered rude. It's just considered the way it is. It's just commonplace. Yeah, it's just it's like oh okay, yeah, you gotta plug in. It's like like the Matrix now.
Right.
Everyone's just plugged in. My phone hardly ever rings. It's just everyone just communicates with text. And no one spells correctly in text. Everyone does abbreviations. It's everything's taking a hit right now.
Yeah. Everybody's we're all moving forward, but we might actually be moving backwards in some respects. I don't know. I
have no idea how. I think we're moving sideways into a hole.
I can agree with that to some extent.
It's just so weird. I'm looking out of my office window right now, and I don't see any kids riding bicycles. No one has. I don't see bicycles on the streets anymore.
Right.
It's very rare. You couldn't, as a kid, you couldn't get me to stay inside. You had, it was almost impossible to get me to come home. Now parents can't even get the kids out of the house.
Yeah.
And it is what it is. Some people say it doesn't matter if kids ride bikes. There's a lot of people out there. It doesn't matter if you talk to somebody and look at them in the eye anymore. That's what it feels like to me. The younger generation, the kids, people in their 20s, they don't really. Physical contact is not really important anymore. It's not really valid. That's what I get. It's not really important. Why do you have to look at somebody in the eye? Why do you have to shake someone's hand? It's not important. It's.
And that's translated into the kind of the movies of now.
And it's translating into the movies now.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. Organic is it's sort of like an archaic word, an idea.
Yeah.
Physical contact is intimacy. Is reached in another way. It's texting. That's where people connect. you know, is how you text and what you text and that whole, like, you know.
As opposed to being on the phone or even just, like, spending actual time together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, just hanging out. And I think, like, the Ninja Turtle movies completely, I reflected on that, you know, like, there's a completely different time, you know, completely different world when the first Ninja Turtles movie came out than it is now. And the CGI Ninja Turtles, you know, and it made a lot of money, so it must be successful, you know, must be a genius, you know, made a lot of money. I mean, people went to see it, people embraced it. I had a good time, you know, but I miss, you know, I feel like a crotchety old man. I feel like I sound like my grandfather now, you know, but, you know, it was different back in the 80s.
Right.
You know, but there was something, you know, cool about that, you know. I
mean, I agree. So,
it was theater, you know,
yeah.
It's theater, you know, it's the merging of theater and film, you know, it's theater, it's theatrical, you know, and I think you can achieve, you know, that's a seminar probably. With CGI, you can achieve a theatrical, you know, quality, you know. But, you know, I believe that for me, what's most entertaining is when something's fresh. And if an actor makes a mistake and it's coming from the truth, the honesty of the moment, you know, you're not in control. You know, that to me is essentially human.
Right.
You know, when you're not in control as a performer, and CGI, you're completely in control. You dictate every moment, and I can see especially for producers or, you know, people who are spending money, they like that idea. Oh, you know, you're not putting anything. There's nothing left for risk. You know, risk is you know, anything that has anything to do with the idea of risk taking is not a good investment. You know?
Right.
So, you know, so having, you know, full control of how you're going to perform this character and how it's going to be rendered and drawn, and, you know, it's like, okay, there, you know, we don't have to depend on a performer slipping or, you know, or missing a mark, or yeah, that's a great idea, you know. So, but I think that, you know, potentially but that's what made the Marx Brothers amazing, and Monty Python. I mean, it you know, they're coming up with ideas. It's improvisational. There's nothing improvisational about CGI. You know, like, I like something that feels in the moment and improvisational. And I think, like, you know, making of the original Turtles, we had a lot of that. It was, you know, you're working with 6 people. You know, one person's moving your eyes and one person's moving your mouth, and you're in the suit. And you're doing, you know, if you're working just with one other character, that's 6 people working together. And if you have all 4, you know, that's 12 people trying to listen to each other. And, you know, the mistakes are going to happen. But within those mistakes, things also happen that are a surprise that you never would have discovered by using your head. You know, it's improvisational. It's something, you know, and I think that was exciting. That part of the process was exciting, of potential of, and that happened all the time making the movie, you know.
Right.
Yeah, it happened all the time. You know, you're blind sometimes, you know, like I could barely see under this little slit under the bandana, you know. So things would happen, you know, and we'd like laugh hysterically, like, great moment, like, you know, let's keep that in there, you know, like there's something great about that raw performance, you know. So that, you know, that's my long-winded answer. You know, the process was so interesting to me, and I reflect on it even now.
Right.
You know?
So speaking of, and you kind of just touched upon this, being inside the suit. I mean, what was that like, being inside the suit?
It was a nightmare. It was it's in the physical way. You know, it's like 120 plus degrees, and you're in complete darkness, and it's, you know, it's like you're like inside a Nerf football that's been sitting in a pool, you know, so you're completely soaking up your sweat. So it's heavy, and you manage after, and if you didn't do anything and you just sat in the suit, that'd be like crazy, like you'd go mad.
Right.
But fortunately, you have a job to do, you know, and and potentially a creative job to do every day. You know, you have these lines to do. You're working with these puppeteers, and you know, so you eventually get lost and you forget your suffering, you know. And you have these servos moving in your head, and you know it's crazy, you know. But it's kind of like sacrificing yourself for the greater good, you know, of the film, and working together, and you know, hopefully, you know, and eventually you look at a take, you know, a playback, you know, like, oh my God, that was great, it was fun, you know. So it is rewarding. But it's not, you know, I mean, it's a challenging job for sure. It's definitely not easy psychologically and physically. I mean, I lost weight doing it, you know.
Right.
It's yeah, I mean, it's a hard, you know, you're covered in neoprene, you know, covered in this rubber, and wearing a computer on your back that's in the shell, and you have these servos going, and your sweat is just like, you're just drenched, you know, and but then there's those, you know, periods of time where you escape into that you're actually this character, and because you generate this will, you know, as camera's rolling, you don't want anyone to perceive that this turtle is suffering, you know, like they got to look like a superhero and happy and light on their feet. And so by, you know, not only are you playing this character, you're hiding the fact that you're suffering while you're playing this character. So I think that by doing that will, you completely forget about your anxiety. You know, you kind of, you believe the lie yourself, you know.
Right. And so being in the suit, you had kind of, what was your range of vision, I guess? Because you mentioned that you could see under the bandana.
Yeah, that was it. I mean, there was you have the turtle eye, and then the eyes are surrounded by this bandana, right? And right underneath the bandana, there's just a small little slit, you know, like it's as if like you took a dime and you punctured, you know, had the dime sideways and you punctured a little, you know, you could probably fit a penny or a dime into this little slit under the bandana. That was it. So, you know, you had to, you know, really figure out where your marks are going to be, so you could, like, you're like blind, you know what I mean? Like, okay, I take 2 steps here, I take a step over here, I turn, and there the chair should be before I sit. Like, you're completely doing it blind. And you have to figure that out really fast, you know. Yeah, there's no peripheral vision, and there's barely any, you know, frontal vision, you know. So you just rehearse it, and you get a couple, you know, you don't even get that much time to rehearse it, you know, in terms of blocking, you know, a couple of minutes, because time is money, and you're filming, and it's, you know, you want me to walk all the way over there, you know, hit this guy, kick this guy, say the line funny, and sit down on this garbage can. Yeah. Right. Oh, okay. You know what I mean? Okay. Sounds good. You know, so you just kind of, you have to wing it, and you kind of develop this sort of, just like blind people do, I guess. So you develop this sort of third eye of how to move around and hit your mark, you know.
Yeah, I can only imagine. It sounds kind of like being in the best/worst Halloween costume ever.
Kind of.
Yeah. So, I mean, in regards to the practical stunts and the choreography.
Yeah, we definitely had. It was a combination of, like, Ernie Reyes Jr. You know, he was a stunt guy, but then they, I'm trying to remember, I think 2 of the guys are sort of Asian American, and then, I'm trying to think I think they were all Asian American on the, wait a minute, let me think here. There's a combination of, I think it was Ernie was the only Asian American as a stunt guy, and the other 3 were from China that they shipped in.
Right.
That were that worked on other Golden Harvest films. and a couple of times they got injured and they just disappeared. They shipped them back. And I think Ernie Reyes Jr. was making like a regular salary because he was a union member, Screen Actors Guild member. He's like an actor too, but he's also this sort of infamous martial arts guy.
Right.
He'd go to a battle of Atlanta. Ernie and his father is like a big shot, martial arts dude. And but the other three are from China, but I think they were making like $50 a day or something like that.
Gotcha.
They weren't making money at all. And it's and they hardly ever used like crash pads. That's why they would get hurt. They didn't believe in it wasn't really a mentality of not believing in safety. They just believed, that you should be able to handle a 30-foot fall.
Right.
So, but the second movie, I think they got local guys, Asian American martial arts guys. They didn't import them from China on the second movie.
Gotcha.
But on the first one, it was, and those guys were like claustrophobic too. I remember this guy, the stunt guy for Leonardo, like ripped off his head, just like ripped it off his head. And he couldn't stand it anymore.
Oh, geez.
Oh my God. It was, so like they'd never done anything like this before. They were just like, they were like, just used to like just wearing regular clothes in like a Jackie Chan movie. And here they are like covered in like this foam latex,
Right.
And they weren't getting anything out of it, they I don't think they had money enough to send home, or maybe they did. Maybe $50 is a lot to send home, But it was your typical. They got them for cheap,
Right.
I don't even think they were staying in nice hotels,
What kind of percentage was it that these the stuntmen took over for what you were doing in the movie?
Well, we would have lines. If there were lines, we would be integrated in part of the fight action, but all the major, if it's like a big wide shot,
right,
and that's all stunt guys. So, they were around they didn't have, their suits were very much like ours, but their heads were just motionless. They didn't wear a computer and have any servos. Like the faces they were motionless. They were just like a stunt head.
Right.
So big wide shot, or close shots of like a foot hitting someone, or, most of the real intricate fight stuff was the stunt guys. I happen to know acrobatics, so I did some acrobatic stuff with Donatello. But they have like a professional skateboarder come in, when opening the movie, you see like Donatello skateboarding in the sewer. That's like a professional skateboard guy.
Right.
So they intricated. There was a village that made these turtles. There were, you had stunt guys, you had specialty guys, you had, voiceover guys, if you think about it, it was, 30 people total to make these characters come to life, which is, huge feat.
Yeah. Well, that's
Falcor.
Yeah, Falcor. Yeah, Falcor.
Falcor.
I can only imagine how many people it took to make him versus just the turtles. Jesus.
Yeah, Falcor is like immense. That head was immense.
Right.
Huge. It's the size of a Volkswagen. And you had people like, you had puppeteers inside his head, working his mouth and his eyes and his ears and his,
Yeah. So that's kind of my next question. So in regards to the way the turtles were performed, obviously your lines were dubbed over. You gave your lines on set, correct? And then they were just dubbed over in post?
We would say the lines together.
Right.
Like I'd be inside the suit and the puppeteer who's moving the mouth would say, and even the person that was like moving the eyeballs, like we all would say the lines and sync together so that, so we're breathing together. Mm-hmm. And so, we're one, without trying to sound too,
But you had to be.
Zen Buddhist, but we had to be, like one. So, and then after, they went through the editing process and at some point they brought other actors in to do the voices in like a little studio in LA somewhere.
Right. So did you know that they were going to replace your voice with someone else? Because there's always that famous story about David Prowse as Darth Vader not knowing that they were replacing his lines. So I was kind of curious if that's kind of the same thing that happened on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Well, we no, it was different than that because it was an unknown, there was a chance that I would, that we would do the voices. There was a chance that the puppeteer that was moving the mouth would, because that's what they do for a living, like on Sesame Street and the Muppet Show, the puppeteer is speaking the lines of the puppet, So if you could think about it, if he's moving the mouth, that, he'd be used to doing the voice. Mm-hmm. So that was, we always knew it would be sort of like an up in the air. Who knew? You know what I mean? Like, I think we all would have liked the opportunity, to continue with putting the character together. So if I or the other guy who puppeteered was chosen to do the voice, then we, the feeling is that we get to continue creating the character. We get to put a little more of our own take on it, especially since we were there when we were filming, so, but at the same time, I think we knew that potentially, they would bring, and then I think like halfway through filming, we kind of figured out that they would try to get famous voices to do it. And,
right.
So we kind of let it go. It wasn't like, it wasn't really a big deal or a focus, we all knew our sort of role, you know what I mean? Like we already kind of knew what our job was. That would just be like a bonus.
Right.
You know what I mean? There was no ego in terms of, I really want to do the voice. You know what I mean? I want to do the voice. I should do the voice. There wasn't anything like that. That's not the vibe on a Jim Henson project. That's not,
Yeah.
You could be like puppeteering the right arm, of Oscar the Grouch, and that, and that puppeteer. That's their job. That's what they do. They take great pride in that.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, yeah, I'm the arm. You know what I mean? Like, woohoo!
Yeah, I can.
You know what I mean? It's not like, I wish I wasn't the arm. I wish I did something. There's none of that. It's like it's an ensemble. You're on it's just like playing on a team. You're the running back. When you're the running back, you don't care if you're like, the linebacker.
Right.
You have a role. It's a team. It's that's the energy of it. You know what I mean? This is your role, and you do it because if you do your role the best of your ability, and everyone else is doing their role the best of their ability, then everything comes together.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No, I got you. It's a collaborative experience.
It's a collaborative, ultra collaborative experience. Like Jim Henson was on the set for a while, and Jim Henson is he was the ultimate collaborative dude. Jim Henson demanded collaboration. He was the leader of a company, and is the director of many films and videos, and he demanded input. He demanded teamwork. In a very innocent, curious way. What do you think? What do you guys think? Hey man, what do you think? That's the kind of person he was that I still aspire to as a director myself. To be curious like a kid. There's a great story about Jim Henson where he was doing The Swedish Chef with Frank Oz, and how they did The Swedish Chef is that Jim would puppeteer the character, and Frank Oz was the hands
right.
for The Swedish Chef. And if you remember The Swedish Chef, they're human hands. They're white human hands. They're not felt hands.
Mm-hmm.
Those are Frank Oz's hands. And I guess one day on the show, Frank was sick, and they needed someone else to do the hands for The Swedish Chef, and Jim asked Kevin Clash to sit in for Frank. And Kevin Clash is the guy who did Elmo.
And one of my favorite characters, Baby Sinclair from the Dinosaurs.
Baby Sinclair from the Dinosaurs.
Yeah.
And he was also Splinter in the original 2 Ninja Turtle movies.
Right.
He was Splinter. So it's Kevin. He's a African American black man. And so here's the Swedish Chef with his black hand. And Jim didn't even see that. They did 20 takes. Went through 3 different skits or something like that. It went on for a while, a couple of hours, something like that, where Jim is colorblind to the point where, not just physically colorblind, he just didn't recognize it. It didn't occur to him, that to me is a great story about Jim Henson, and then he got really embarrassed at the end of around 2 hours, and everyone's wanted to say something. He was kind of tense, and Kevin was making people laugh without Jim understanding what the laugh's about by doing gangster gestures, and it was hilarious. Everyone was this contained laughter. They didn't want to say anything,
Right.
And at one point, Jim Henson's "Oh, Kevin, I feel so bad." I think we got to find somebody else. He's really embarrassed, about it. Here's the Swedish Chef.
Right.
But that's so Jim. There's all these stories about Jim Henson would even, if he wasn't the center part of the scene, he would grab a background puppet like they're doing some Sesame Street scene, where they're in a classroom, and he'd be in the back row, and then suddenly, they're filming, and suddenly the stage manager, which they call in, that show, there's not really a director, they call it the stage manager, and the stage manager is who's doing that puppet back there, settle down, that'd
right.
be Jim, having fun and playing like a kid, So, that sort of energy was there on the Ninja Turtles,
right.
The sense of play, which I've been on a lot of movie sets since in different capacities and roles, and that's, the sense of play, making a movie gets lost for a lot of reasons, because time is money and the pressure of making it, and there's less money to make things now than there ever was, and there's less time to make a film or a TV show than there ever was, and movie sets and TV sets are run like military boot camps, and and everything. Everyone's innocence and the sense of play gets completely lost. And I think that that's a very unique quality that someone like Jim Henson had.
Right.
The sense of play and curiosity and innocence, and it was just very intimate, and people are connecting and they're collaborating with each other. Never Ending Story, Wolfgang Peterson, it's not a flawless film at all. It's sort of dated, and now it's whatever. You can judge it in however many ways, but there's something really so beautiful about that movie, in terms of the, how it's done and the innocence about it, and I don't know. I question whether we're going in the right direction,
Yeah.
But I hear the new Star Wars is coming out. I think they have some practical characters in that.
That is what I've heard. Actually, I've heard that.
Yeah, that's awesome. That J.J. Abrams. That makes sense. J.J. Abrams is I think he's a really great filmmaker. Like that. I hope that's true.
Well, I know that the little robot that's circular that they show in one of the trailers, that is an actual physical robot, and they actually had it on stage with them yesterday at the Star Wars Celebration, which I think is fantastic because
fantastic.
Yeah,
I'm with you. I think that's great. I think the majority of the audience, the majority of the Comic-Con audience, like these kids today, and I don't think they give a flying shit. I don't think that. I think that they're flocking to the movies and they're loving the movies, and 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 that's fine. You know,
Right.
I don't want to seem too anti-CGI, because like those CGI artists are wicked talented at what they do, and you know,
it takes away from the human aspect of the film.
I want, does it? You know, I think it does. I personally, you know, whether that, but then like, you know, then you have the, well, does that matter? You know,
it does if you care about it.
I think you care about it, but like if you're telling a story, you know, are you telling the story with, you know, like you use like the second Ninja Turtle movies, like, was the story told? Yes. Did they achieve telling this story that was written on the script? Yes. You know, were they able to do things that were larger than life, flying down the snowy mountain into the truck that look amazing? Yes. You know, like, you know, there's an argument where who cares? You know what I mean? Who cares about, and you know, people, I think you can say, well, it's very human, the movie, the way they performed it, and with the vocal, the voice, and, you know, I felt like there was a human quality to it. Like, yes, you know, but
right.
You're still, for me, and hopefully others, you know.
I mean, I actually didn't even enjoy the new TMNT movie because it just felt so, I want to say soulless. That's kind of what it felt like. There's just something so, I don't know, great about knowing that those are real people in real suits jumping around, doing kicks and flips, and, you know, and that it's this huge kind of experience of making these turtles, because like you said, it's like 20 people to do one turtle almost, because you have the voice actors and the puppeteers.
A great example, I think the most, you know, I think the greatest example of what you're talking about and what we're talking, you know, is Star Wars. You know what I mean? That's Yoda. That's R2-D2. That's C-3PO. That's Chewbacca. You know, like they're being performed in some way. They really are alive. And then, you know, because they're being performed live.
Right.
And there's a suspension of disbelief, even though we know that they're not, but they are. You know, it's like getting lost and watching some, you know, a magic show, or, you know, the Muppet Show, or puppet, you know, marionettes, or whatever, Cirque du Soleil, you know, like where you're transported and you believe in this story that someone is trying to tell on stage or in film that is, you know, and that's the magic of, you know, theater and dance and filmmaking. I mean, you know, it's imagination. It's, you know, I personally just miss that.
Right.
And hearing that and seeing the trailer for Star Wars, and I knew this guy who was the production manager for Star Wars in Abu Dhabi, where they made the town for Star Wars. They took months to build this road and then build a set in the desert outside of Abu Dhabi. And he was out there for months and months to create this town, and you know, he told me there were these, like, you know, it was amazing. You know, these you have puppeteers getting me these costumes, and, you know, and they're, you know, it's old school, you know, and hopefully people will appreciate that, you know, because I think that we're in a different generation. We're so used to watching video games, and, you know, CGI has presented the ability to do things, which is true, which we couldn't do practically.
Right.
You know, from explosions to dinosaurs to, you know, it does bring elements of a script to life. I mean, I use, you know, I don't know if that's the word, life, but it brings it onto the screen, and, you know,
I mean, a great example is if you look at Jurassic Park 1 with the T-Rex. They could never have done what they did in the third Jurassic Park movie with two giant T-Rex like animals fighting each other. They could never have done that with practical effects. Does that make it a better movie? Yes, because
exactly. Like, you know, do we need to see that? You know,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Because to me, what made the Turtles great in the first two movies.
Well, Alien. Look at the first Alien.
Right.
You know, like, I mean, that's, you know, I don't know.
Well, it's just when you don't have CGI, you have to focus more on certain aspects of the script or, you know, whatever. As opposed to with CGI, you can just kind of do these grandiose set pieces, and that can cover up for any lack of actual story in the film. Because to me, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the first two movies, are so great because the interactions between the characters. Not because that there's these huge set pieces where the turtles are fighting on top of buildings and falling off of skyscrapers and stuff. That's not why the movies are great.
But it is also, you know, you could say the same argument between digital and film.
Right.
You know, people have forgotten about film. I mean, it was like, it was such an event like 15 years ago around the millennium where, you know, the first HD film was shot, you know, the camera, the 24p camera, Sony camera with the Panavision lenses. And it was a big deal because it was a transition from shooting film into high def. And all kinds of articles where film is dying. You know, we don't need film anymore. It's cheaper to, you know. And we've gone to a point 15 years later where people don't even give it a thought. You know, I just directed the film in Mississippi. You know, it's not even. You know, the director. You know, you bring up. You know, how about Super 16 or 35? It's like a very brief conversation. Leaf, no, that's, you know, it's like
right.
Film, you know, but because of that, and the audience is now just watching high def. You know, there's no film projected theaters anymore. If there are, there's probably some somewhere. But I'm saying in the general public, the AMC theaters, you know, it's digitally projected. You know, they have digital projectors now, and there's no film projectors. So, you know, it's kind of, but if you ever compare a movie that's shot in 35 millimeter projected on with a 35 millimeter projector, it's not even close. It is not the depth of field, the richness and the texture. It's not even close. 35, you know, the film looks amazing over digital. You can see the difference. Digital, even high def, you put them side by side. It's so obvious.
Right.
You know, I think that, I mean, to me, it's sort of like the difference between crayons and oil painting. And yes, you get really creative with crayons, and you can do, you know, you can do some good things. You know, I'm not taking anything away from crayons, but, you know, there's a big difference.
Right.
You know, and I see it. A lot of people see it, but it's just too expensive now. It's come down to money. It is why people don't use film as opposed to digital. It's money. It's just money. You know, an aesthetic choice, an artistic medium has been destroyed, really, if you think about it. It's, you know, by money, by the movie business of the filmmaking process. It's not, people didn't, you know, go to high def out of choice. It became out of necessity. You go, oh, we can do this cheaper. We don't have to do all these conversion costs, especially since we're doing CGI and when, you know, like, you know, no one shoots film anymore, really. So, and it's sad. No one's even talking about it. No one cares. You know, it's like it's doing the trick. You know, doing the trick. Who cares?
Right.
You know?
I actually had a conversation with someone about all of this, and I don't think that you're the only one who's kind of up.
Oh, I don't think I'm the only one either.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm the only one either, but I am definitely a minority.
Right.
I mean, I went through film school, and we were, you know, given Bolex cameras and, you know, 8 millimeter, 16 millimeter. We were learning how to edit on editing bays where we're touching negatives, and, you know, I was exposed to film. I came from a generation where my dad took me out of school to see Rocky on film.
Right.
You know. So the kids today have not even been exposed to film, so they're not missing anything. They're the general audience today, the major purchasing ticket audience, which are teenagers. They don't see the difference, and so why should anybody care? So but this is an artistic, aesthetic, personal choice that doesn't really matter in the equation. It's just sad,
right?
And it's just the same thing with organic puppeteering as opposed to CGI. I miss it. I appreciate it. There's something great about that. I wonder. Like the general population on the planet Earth, if they took away theater, and said, well, we're not going to have any more theater. We're going to take theater away. Theater's gone. Would the general major population miss theater? Probably not. I don't think it would be like this major news item.
Right.
That there's no more theater. The people that love theater would be devastated, but that's a minority. That's not a lot of people, So not seeing a real Yoda or the real Turtles, was there a big hullabaloo about it? I didn't read anything about it. I didn't see any articles pertaining that got published in major magazines or newspapers about missing the original Yoda.
Well, let me put it this way: the prequel Star Wars films aren't exactly that highly regarded. So maybe that people didn't have to say it outright. It was just reflected, I guess, in there. I don't know.
Is that true? The first three Star Wars movies aren't highly regarded? Is that true?
The prequel ones, yeah. 1, 2, and 3, the ones that most recently came out, are not considered very good films.
Oh, no, but the first three were made.
The first 3 that were made are fantastic, but the prequel ones aren't held in very high regard at all.
Oh, yeah, no, I know that.
Yeah.
I thought you meant, right, they're called prequels, that's right. The next set of 3 were prequels, right?
Yeah. No, the first 3, they still hold up, and even, if, they have all these practical effects. And I think that's just, there's something that practical effects have that CGI will never have, and that's you kind of know and understand that that there is a person, and that there are people doing this, and that they are putting their blood, sweat, and tears into making these characters come alive. And when it's
who are the characters? Who were the garbage men in Star Wars? The little guys that had the huge rusted.
The Jawas.
The Jawas, like those are like little people, like
right.
It's like. It's great.
And the guy in the R2-D2 suit is a smaller gentleman inside of the canister of that suit. You can fake that, but
and the Ewoks.
Yeah.
Come on, the Ewoks are tremendous.
That's why I just didn't enjoy the new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie.
What's that movie? Gremlin.
Right.
Come on. You know what I mean? Like, that's awesome. Like, those are puppeteered little creatures. Yeah.
Which is terrifying because they've been talking about making a new Gremlins movie.
Really?
Yeah, which God only knows. It's going to just be all CGI and...
Of course it is.
Yeah, because like you said, it's cheaper that way.
I don't know if it's necessarily CGI. It's cheaper.
It's probably more cost effective.
I wonder. Like, I just saw. What did I watched for the first time. Probably the last person to see it, but Edge of Tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
And
I just recently saw that movie as well, so I'm in kind of the same boat as you.
And it was better than I thought. But I'm just saying, if you look at the credits, an immense amount of people,
right,
who were digital artists on that. It can't be cheaper.
Right.
There's no way it's cheaper. But what's cheaper is shooting on digital and not on film. Sometimes I question, like, how much cheaper is it really? I guess it's, but no one really, there's a lot of directors and producers and people out there who get such a push for high def, that fell in love with high def for whatever reason. There are other things that high def offers too, in terms of, you can shoot film and convert it to digital, so you can do all this stuff in nonlinear editing and After Effects and, things that you can, it's amazing. There's amazing things you can do now, in the digital age that are stupendous, but, the actual look of the film when you shoot, there's nothing, you can't compare, you have to convert it all, and it's conversion costs are expensive, but it's not, people like, I wonder if, because I don't hear a lot. I don't hear people saying they miss something, I don't hear people,
except for us. except for,
I wonder. Yeah. I mean, those photographers working for National Geographic, they're shooting on digital cameras. They're not shooting on, no one's shooting film. Or are they? I'm curious.
Right.
Are there people who are still shooting film? I saw this. It's a good question. Maybe it's not. Anyway. So.
I mean, there has to be someone, but I just don't. I mean, obviously the industry of Hollywood has gone away from film. So, and if they're leading, if they're kind of leading that push, then there you go. Can't really do anything about it at this point. I guess is kind of the way I look at it.
The world's ending soon anyway, so it doesn't matter.
So.
But then again, the same thing like Marvel, and Pixar. I mean, those people are actually making, the movies are crap for the most part nowadays. Like, I'm so disinterested. And
which is why I'm surprised you actually enjoyed the new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie.
Well, I think it's a sentimental thing.
Right. Yeah. I can understand. I can understand that.
And I'm trying to be a team player.
Team player for the brand.
I mean, so, well, just, it's like I'm not trying to, right. So I sound like jaded and cynical, but it's not about that. It's like, oh, I wasn't in it. And that's not about that. It's just, it's the aesthetic of it. But Marvel and, Pixar, they're the few companies that are actually trying to make movies that think of their audience.
Right.
And there's a lot of movies today, they don't give a shit about who their audience is. They're out of touch with who their audience is. And I think making a film is a responsibility. I think, you're asking people to make to spend their hard-earned money and their quality time, precious quality time, and give it to you.
Right.
Give you their money and their time to see this event that you've created. You better be you better care about your audience. You better feel responsible that what you're making is a gift to them. But I don't know. I go to a lot of movies today. It's obvious they're just trying to seduce the audience to come see it, to fill as many seats as they can. How can they market this and fill the seats? They could really care less, and never was it in the intention of the filmmakers at all that they're all responsible to the audience. Just how can we get them in the seats?
Right, bait and switch.
Make a good poster, make a good trailer, and make it. We'll have a bunch of car racing in it. We'll do some explosions, and we'll put a star in it. That's it. We'll get a big star in it. We'll get a big name in it.
Right.
Yeah, that'll put people in the seats. They don't give a shit about the story, how the story is told. Is this an important story? Is it a story that an audience wants to see? They really don't care. It's who's in it? Who's the cast? Is it a name? Is it a name that's like the very popular word in the business, valuable?
Right.
And then we got something, and we can sell this. We can put it on the shelf, and people will buy it. That's all we care about for the most part. And yes, there's an exception to the rule. That are people that are trying to make stories and that are authentic and are even in its and I think Pixar and the way they conduct themselves, and even Marvel with the movies, they're thinking about their audience,
right?
And even and this is not and what I'm talking about is not free from the independent world either. I'm not sitting on some sort of high horse like, well, the independent world You know, like there's so much bullshit in the independent world too. I see a lot of independent films. And I'm like, who did they make this movie for?
Themselves.
You know,
for themselves.
Yeah, for the cynical, you know, the jaded or the pseudo intellectual, you know, art film crowd that, you know, fancies themselves as, you know, educated, you know,
right,
at some festival, you know, or it's just, you know, I just don't understand that either, you know. There's so many films like that. I'm like, who is this for? I just was screening some film that my girlfriend as an editor was looking at, who was, you know, checking out because they were thinking about finding a new editor. And I was like watching this, and I was just like, what is this? Who is this? It's the same. So it's, you know, who's this? It's not for anybody, you know. That's, you know. And so it's like, I don't think, you know, I'm not attacking Hollywood, or no one's free from it. Right. You know, like the independent world too. It's like, God, like half the movies at Sundance I heard this year were like unwatchable. You know.
Oh, jeez.
You know, what's happened to the innocence and the curiosity and the responsibility and the sense of play and the suspension of disbelief and, you know, stories that are giving back and that are trying to change the world or try to lift people's hearts, and, you know.
It's all about making money. So it's kind of become, unfortunately.
It's an expensive art form.
Yeah.
You know, you can't, you know, it's like if you choose to be an artist and you're a painter or illustrator, you know, you can, it's cheap to go to get a notebook and, you know, a pencil and be prolific and work on your craft and just keep drawing and painting. And, you know, it's a lot cheaper than trying to make movies.
Yeah.
You know, and growing as a storyteller in the film medium is an expensive thing. You know, even the greatest filmmakers of all time, you know, look how many films they made compared to how many sculptures and paintings Picasso did. It's not even close.
Yeah.
You know, how many movies has Spielberg done? I'm curious. 15?
Something like, yeah, it's not nearly as many as the paintings that
Picasso did, you know, 3,000, you know, drawings in his life. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
You know, so it's such an expensive medium that the pressure is so high. You know, it's amazing that anything gets accomplished. It's amazing that anything gets made. You know, so it's such a bad investment, really. You're rolling the dice. The percentages are low that you're going to make money. So, you know, the intangibles of trying to guarantee at least getting your money back and putting people in the seats has a lot to do with things that have nothing to do with things that we've been talking about, like the responsibility to an audience, the story, why are we making this film, you know. Something gets completely squashed. You need a name. You need a couple of names.
Yeah.
Domestic, foreign, you know. What was that, an old story of Bob Evans, you know, that producer Bob Evans, you know, he came in, he did this whole pitch, he had the script, and he throws it on the table, and he pitches his whole idea to some studio execs. And he sells the idea for this movie. He says these names are going to be in it. And then he left the room. He sold the idea for his movie, whatever. And then someone like opened the script and there was nothing in it. It was just blank pages.
Right.
You know, so it's really, what I'm saying is not an original idea. Or, you know, it's just the way it is. It is what it is.
So kind of speaking of this the kind of the nature of the business now and the way it was, and the way it is now.
First of all, let me say I am not a scholar of the business whatsoever.
Right.
I mean, I don't consider myself this is just my personal feeling and opinion.
Of course. So you were on the first and the second film, and this kind of goes back to the change in the way things are done. What was it like on the first film versus the second film? Was there kind of a huge difference? Was there a different feeling since the first film was as wildly successful as it was?
What was the difference? I think that was,
Because they were made within a year of each other, which is shockingly fast.
I think, yeah, they wanted to turn it over. I think the first one is a little more darker. The first film was approached as sort of like more of like, an independent film.
Right.
Like, the second one, I think, was a little more colorful and goofy and commercial, Secret of the Ooze. It was, I think, in the process of making it was a little more playful, coming up with bits.
There's a lot of physical comedy in the second one.
There's a lot of physical comedy in the second one. But there was something lighthearted about the second one that I enjoyed. A little more of a sense of humor, trying to find the humor, as opposed to the first one, which was I think the big difference is goofiness. So the second one was a little more goofy and playful, and the first one was like this very new thing, and trying to have an aspect of darkness in it. Telling of this tale, turtles in the shadows, where I think in the second one it was I don't think there was any shadows in the second one.
Except for the beginning when they jump out of the thing. That's kind of it.
Yeah, I mean, it was just big and colorful, the secret of the ooze, just kind of, when I think back on the movie, I see a lot of lime green.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think the poster was lime green, right? It was like this, very colorful take on it, and and trying to cater more to the kids than the first one, So, but Michael Pressman, who was the director on the second one, was great. He was awesome. He was just having fun. That was the energy on the second. The first one was like this, trying to perfect a spacecraft to land on the moon, and the second one, we've already done that, so let's kind of explore the moon. Just have fun on the moon this time. Where the first one was like trying to, get there and, and survive a landing, where the second movie was more like, let's have some fun.
Right.
So that would be the biggest difference.
So when you were on the set of the first film, did you think that that the movie was going to be successful? Did you get that feeling, or was it kind of, this could go either way?
Oh, no. I think we did, because the Turtles were already a huge deal.
Right.
And the costumes looked amazing. We're looking at some playback, and it looked stunning, and like, how could this not be? Yeah.
Right.
I think that there was no doubt in our minds that this is going to be, big.
Uh-huh.
Because the Turtles, it wasn't like we're introducing some idea.
This wasn't a novel concept. This was a pre-established franchise.
It was already established. The comic books were huge. The toys were already in the toy stores.
Yeah.
They already had an audience.
Yeah.
A mega audience.
They were just asking for movies to be made, more or less.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which movie did you, I guess, personally enjoy working on more then, since you've kind of gone into the difference between the two?
I like both. Both, I think the second one maybe health-wise, because we had figured out, the suits, getting in and out, and there was, less amount of cords holding the neck, so it wasn't as uncomfortable, it was more comfortable. But the material and the first one, never replaced that experience because it was so new.
Right.
There's such a mystery about it, So I don't know. I think they're just apples and oranges,
Right. How long did it take you to get in and out of the suits?
I think that depends on the.
I guess how long did it take you to get in and out of the suits on a good day and on a bad day?
I would say on a good day, I don't know, to strap us all in, an hour and a half, 2 hours to get in, hour and a half to get in, and then on 10 minutes to get out.
Wow.
15 minutes on a bad day, half hour to get out. You get out of it pretty quick.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if like you're overheating and you're gonna throw up.
Right.
Like you're out of there pretty quick.
How often did any of that...
Putting them on.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. What's your question?
No, you go ahead and finish.
It's depending on, but putting it on was a very time-consuming process,
Right.
And maintaining it, because like we would move around and perform, and certain snaps would come undone, and like you'd have to, we had dressers around us all the time, making sure that the turtle looked great, and we'd chew up hands and feet, especially the feet. They would get chewed up, so we'd have to replace the feet so they look fresh and new. And getting in and out was half of it. While you're in it and maintaining it, so it was just a constant, task. You felt like you were always getting in it, and you're always trying to get out of it. Like it was, you can't feel your hands. Can we take the hands off for a little bit?
Right.
You're constantly getting the head off and putting the head back on it. Them having to get into the shell and check on the computer because one servo isn't working. Like they have to check the head because the eye's not working. The shoot is constantly in flux.
Mm-hmm.
Very rarely did it feel like the thing was just on.
Right.
It was always being monitored and checked and tweaked, and you know what I mean. So.
Well, yeah, that was kind of my next question: is how kind of cumbersome, I guess isn't the right word, but how big of a pain were these suits sometimes to work with? I'm assuming that they were just sometimes an absolute nightmare. No,
I don't think they were cumbersome. They weren't uncomfortable, in their design, it's just that you're sweating so much. They get heavy and you're soaking wet, and then the servos would get a little loud in the head, and you have like this skull cap on that keeps the head on that's form fitted to your skull. And sometimes like you're moving around, that would, you could feel that. It's like wearing, after a while, a bicycle helmet starts, you need to take it, it gets uncomfortable. It was just really hot, That was just really hot. And there's nothing they can do about that, really. Just extremely living in extreme heat and surrounded in foam latex that was soaking wet.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of I guess you could say that's uncomfortable, but it wasn't uncomfortable because of its design.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and this might kind of be, I don't know if this is sore subject or whatnot. There were obviously 3 original movies, and you weren't in the third one. Kind of what was the story behind that?
Well, that's because the Jim Henson company was not asked to make the costumes for it. The third movie, they went on the cheap.
Which is obvious. Obvious if you watch the movie.
Yeah. They had like some other company make the suits. I don't even know if they exist anymore. And because of that, the other performers weren't asked to be a part of it. It was the most oddest, they just wanted to go on the cheap, so, we knew that was happening ahead of time.
Right.
As soon as Jim Henson, as soon as they didn't want to use the Creature Shop because they're too expensive, it's like, oh, okay, all right.
Seems to me a colossal misstep in thinking, but all right.
I guess, that's, I don't, I kind of understand why someone would make that decision financially. But a lot of times you're making you're making a financial decision. And I think they fully well knew, either they fully well knew, well, that's not important. They're not going to look as good and who cares?
Right.
We're saving money. Or they claim or knew or believed because the other company pitched the idea. No, you're not going to tell at all. It's going to be great, and we can do it for a third of the price, and so I'm sure whoever produced it, I'm sure they well, they told us it was going to look great, and it's not our fault. They came to us and they said they could do it for a third of the price, and it looked great. So of course we're going to do that. But I believe that they knew, that they were sacrificing integrity for money.
Right.
But then there's this argument which what we've been talking about this whole conversation, like, does integrity really matter? You know what I mean? I don't think it really does. I mean, to some people.
Right.
To most.
To the majority. To the majority, it doesn't.
Yeah, authenticity, it's just like, I mean, it's not just in the industry. It's like in like sports, you have purists. People that believe or don't believe in the designated hitter, and people that, in the American League and the National League, it's like, you have people that, some people that love the old uniforms, but then you have those people. It's like, all the uniforms seem to be updated. And, it's, I don't think it's, I just like, people hanging out and having dinner together, and they're both like, taking bites of their pasta and texting someone else. It's not, I don't think it's that important to people anymore.
Right.
And I think that, that in the business, they know that, no one cares about authenticity, really, integrity anymore. Or no one, so we'll just give them video games. Everyone will be happy.
Yeah.
That's,
well, and that to me is kind of what the new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie is kind of for me, is that's kind of like, oh, look, I mean, no one's going to care if it's real people in suits or not, so why not? We'll just make them all CGI, and they can just be CGI turtles running around, because no one cares, right?
Yeah, and I
except for the vocal minority of people who have loved Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles since they were children and think that them doing this just feels like a cash grab. I'm not saying that was right or anything,
that's all. Right, and that's all I'm saying. It's just a personal preference.
Yeah.
I mean, I can see how the other is entertaining, and I can, it's so great to see Yoda like bouncing off the walls, or Leonardo being able to fly down a snowy mountain. But it's, I'm minority. I mean, most of the people out there prefer the latest movie.
All right, so let's talk about the Turtles a little bit. Because in the second and third movie, we kind of have this rotating cast of voices and also people who play the Turtles in the suit. Not the stunt suit, obviously, but just in the suit. So what did you guys think about the Turtles in the first film?
I like them. I think they're pretty good. The voices are interesting. Honestly, before I did research for this as to who played who, and I was just watching the 3 live actions, I couldn't really tell the voices were all that different. I mean, obviously there's slight variations, but then they're 3 years apart or whatever. So I just sort of didn't register that they were different voices. The bodies I sort of never looked into until we started looking for interviews and talking to people in creature suits, and those are, I've got a whole new respect for people that are in creature suits.
Especially knowing what we know about how little space they have to see, and how hot the day. I mean, these were a labor of love and a real, these were a thing. A big time thing to make these turtles come to life. I think because the second one is my favorite, I always kind of noticed that in the first film, the turtles look a little off to me, because in my mind, the second film is kind of the gold standard. So every time I can spot the differences, I guess. Because Leonardo's got a weird nose in the first one. Do you know what I mean? It's a little bit more of a pronounced beak, I guess.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think voice-wise, I think the voice that I like the most is probably Corey Feldman as Donatello. But I think the one I like the least is the guy who does the voice for Raphael.
In the first movie?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't really have much of an opinion on the voices and the guys in the suits. Mostly because as I watched them, I would because I being on crunch time and me recording from North Carolina right now, the time I literally rushed through watching to make sure I saw everything, and I had to rewatch a bunch of things because of either being drunk or tired or whatever. So I didn't really develop a big opinion as to who did a better job. On the whole, I really liked everything I saw. I didn't really get all that nitpicky about it. And I guess to the average viewer, they're not going to notice a lot of things, or even if it's someone that loves TMNT and they don't have a specific live action favorite like you do, Chris.
Right.
I don't think they're going to notice.
But they'll note. I mean, you would notice a difference going from the first to the second to the third with the voices, with the voice actors.
Well,
because some of them are the same. Some of them are the same. Brian Tochi plays Leonardo in all three.
You would notice,
Robbie Rist plays Mikey in all three.
You would notice a difference if you watched literally all three of them back to back to back. I don't think you would notice so much if you watched one on a Tuesday, the second on a Wednesday, and the third on a Thursday like that. If you had 24 hours in between, I don't think you'd really notice. Because we didn't really notice that with Hellboy and Hellboy 2. At least I didn't. And John didn't. I think John said he didn't really notice the much difference in the voice.
Yeah, because I watched them in reverse.
Yeah. I don't know if they're. I don't think that the turtle voice performers are imitating one another. In Hellboy, Doug Jones was imitating to some extent David Hyde Pierce's role. Mm-hmm. In these, I don't think they're imitating. I think they're just doing like a voice.
Perhaps,
because the voice for Donatello in the second movie is not Corey Feldman, and it is drastically different. Because Corey Feldman kind of has like a higher pitched nasally voice.
I mean, again, I watched them all, and then I started doing research into the cast and the trivia and all that kind of stuff. So I didn't even really notice just watching the movies. And I didn't watch them. I watched 1 and 2 a week ago. And then I watched the other 3 this week, so maybe I just don't remember. But specifically, you pointing out that you didn't really like Raphael's voice in the first one, I kind of do. Like, now that you bring it up, it's a lot more like, yeah, I'm a fucking badass. I hate everybody, you know?
Yeah, Raphael definitely had the truest New York feel to his voice, and the timbre and the inflections in his voice kind of probably was the most true as far as mimicking the character on paper that we're familiar with.
I mean, it helps that Josh Pace is from New York, so
oh yeah.
All these, it helps if you're portraying like a, hey, don't fuck with me, hey, douchebag. I mean, that helps that he's from New York.
Yeah.
Hey, how you doing? Like that, he's not like Jersey Shore, but, it's supposed to be like a take no shit, turtle.
And that's what I mean. From what I'm remembering of Raphael's voice in the first movie, I feel like he's more like I'm a hard ass sounding than the other turtles were, and I like that about Raph.
I think that kind of comes with the fact that the first film's supposed to be darker.
Well, that's true too.
Yeah, I mean the second film is like a lighthearted kind of romp.
Right, and the turtles hardly use their weapons at all.
Yeah, well, we can get to that here. Mm-hmm. We can get to that when we get to the movie. So in the first film, they fight the Shredder
and the Foot Clan.
But there's also this kind of side story of, I guess there's like kids that are being hired or conscripted by the Foot to kind of do the Foot's dirty work also, because those kids aren't Foot Clan.
No, they're being just recruited and tested.
They're being recruited and tested.
Smoking children smoking cigars.
I was kind of confused too. I didn't really notice it. I thought I saw it. Were they actually drinking alcohol? Like, did they have kids drinking beer, or was it just soda?
I don't know, but there were kids smoking cigarettes.
Well, yeah,
there were totally kids smoking cigarettes.
I couldn't make out some of the can logos, and some of them looked like old school '90s beer cans.
And they might have been. That was the point of that area.
Yeah.
Their little hangout. It was like, hey, join the Foot Clan, do like a year-long probationary period where we give you cigarettes and you play arcade games and skateboard inside. And then after that probationary period, we're going to beat the shit out of you because we're angry and you're ninjas now.
Yeah. So they fight the Shredder, and the Shredder is a constant presence through the first and second films. I think in the first film, though, I think in this movie, he's a little bit of a weaker villain because he's not on screen as much.
Yeah, in the second one, he's like the main boss one. And in the first one, he sort of leaves all of his commanding to
the Tatsu.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And just the Foot Clan in general. I mean, the Turtles fight the Foot Clan
pretty regularly in the comics
first
and cartoons.
Yeah. What do you guys think of Judith Hoag as April O'Neil?
I liked it. To me, it was probably the truest April O'Neil. I didn't like the later ones.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting. I mean, I didn't have a problem with her performance, but just from my research, I mean, she refused to wear any sort of bright yellow anything until they forced her to wear the raincoat in the beginning. Mm-hmm. And she complained about the violence in the movie, and she complained about the 6-day-a-week filming schedule.
Well, just
and that's why they
hard
didn't
to work with.
No, but again, I mean, when you are playing a character,
you had to have read the goddamn script, right?
No,
like you're playing opposite 4 suited people, and she's complaining.
No,
that's my issue with all that is like, and she's complaining. She wasn't in a suit.
Yeah, no, I get the. I can understand, appreciate, and get the move away from Judith Hoag. What I'm saying is I liked Judith Hoag as April O'Neil. To me, her portrayal of the character, to me, just felt more akin to the cartoons and comics and whatnot. It just, visually, it felt better to me, I guess, and looked better, and I wasn't
I felt like she was... I don't know.
I mean, I didn't have a problem with it.
I felt like she was super introspective as the character, and everything else we've ever seen the character as. She's kind of like a bright and bubbly character, not this kind of dour, depressing character.
She had some bright and bubbly to her, but I think that also goes in line with the fact that the movie was supposed to be darker.
Yeah.
Which I can be cool with. And it's not that I didn't like the later portrayals of April O'Neil. It's just, out of all of them, I probably would pick Judith Hoag as my favorite.
I mean, I don't know. I didn't have a problem with her portrayal, but I think I like Paige Turco's better. It feels more to me.
She has better chemistry.
Yeah, I feel like she has a better interactions with the turtles. And you don't really see her interact with Casey Jones because Casey Jones isn't in the second one and isn't back in time in the third one. But I don't know. I feel like her April O'Neil was more like supporting than Judith Hoag was.
Yeah. I don't know. I just, again, having not seen this movie for as long as I haven't, and now sitting down and watching it, she's not the April that I grew up with. So she just doesn't have the personality that I would hope April O'Neil would have. Does that make sense? Because it's a darker movie. Maybe it's just because Judith Hoag just didn't buy into the role. Could be any number of things.
I can get and appreciate that. It's just for the tone of the story and Judith's overall look.
Again, she's in a movie with 4 turtles.
4 turtles in a suit. Yeah, 4 guys in turtle suits.
Complain more, please.
Well, and don't get me wrong, I'm on board with the whole not wanting to work with someone who's difficult, but if we're actually talking about her portrayal of the character for the story that was being told, I dug it. I liked it.
She just to me didn't have the chemistry that I would want her to have with the turtles, I guess. So, but what did you guys think of Elias Koteas as Casey Jones?
His Casey Jones is awesome.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, he plays that character.
He is Casey Jones in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's unfortunate that they got rid of him for the second film.
Well, because he was in the first movie. He's like, Casey Jones uses sports equipment to kick the shit out of criminals and wears a hockey mask that makes him look imposing. And he is sort of that street smart thug type character, so he's not really kiddie friendly. So,
well, I mean, they replaced him in the second film, and in doing so, we got Kino, which I'm totally fine with, because they replaced Casey Jones to be Kino.
Mm-hmm. Because Kino was a character that was more friendly to younger audiences.
And then we can get to that when we talk to the second one.
Right.
So, I think that the first one, it does a good job of setting a stage for the future films.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think it's a better origin story kind of telling than a lot of the things we watch now.
Yeah, I like the origin story better. And it sticks to the comics mostly. And I want to point out that there's a theory, I don't know if it's been verified by the creators or not, but that the origin of the Ninja Turtles, the reason why the toxic goo fell into the sewer is because of the car crash that made Daredevil blind. Like the toxic chemicals being carried by the truck that tipped over and got shit in Daredevil's eyes leaked ooze into the sewers, and that ooze is what turns the turtles into mutants. Because the creators really liked Daredevil, but they couldn't straight up say it. So in the comics, you have this like origin where a truck, it's just like an old man crosses the road, a kid dives into the road to save the old man from getting hit by a truck spills over, toxic ooze hits the kid, ooze falls into the sewer, turtles get mutated. But at no point do they say Daredevil because they were working for a different comic book company.
Huh, I never even heard that. But I mean, you know, that's kind of an interesting way of tying it all together. Just Marvel, please don't buy Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Actually, you know what? Actually, Marvel, please buy Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yeah, because then Michael Bay can't make any more.
Yeah, for the love of God. Just do like they did with Amazing Spider-Man. But we can get to that. We can get to that. Let's keep the vitriol down. These are the good movies. I think that this movie is good. Again, I don't have the nostalgia for this movie that I do for the second one because it's just, I never watched it as a kid, you know. And I think that there are too many human characters in this movie, like her boss with his son. I think that was the one part of this movie I was like, like I'm never really invested in any of the characters. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but they kind of had to have something like that so the turtles could find out about the Foot Plan.
Right. I mean, yeah, but just to me, that's the one part of this movie where I'm like, I'm not that big on it. Is her boss, Charles, and his son, who has fallen in with the Foot Clan.
Danny.
Yeah. I think that the Raphael going into a coma thing and them going to the farm is probably my favorite part of the movie.
I agree with that now that I'm older. Are we good? I agree with that now that I'm older, but I think when I was a kid, I didn't really care much for that part because it doesn't have the jokes and it doesn't have the turtles kicking the shit out of the Foot Clan and all that kind of stuff. But I think now that I'm older, I appreciate the storytelling aspect of that portion more.
Yeah, I mean, they're building up the characters.
Right.
They're giving us a reason to care about the characters.
Right.
Which, I mean, any comic book movie nowadays could totally learn from that. I mean, that was the best part of Avengers 2, was when they're all at that party talking and palling around. Mm-hmm. And that's because they were building the characters and giving us a reason to care about them.
Right, and showing us their relationships.
Right. I mean, I don't really care about the turtles just jumping around kicking people unless I'm invested in why they're doing it. Or if I'm invested in one of those characters. So that's my favorite part of this movie is after Raph gets attacked and thrown through a skylight, they go to this farm to escape.
Because the Foot Clan sets fire to April's house.
Yeah. Because the Foot Clan are a bunch of assholes in the first movie.
They are fucking dicks.
The Foot Clan is a bunch of assholes in basically every movie.
Yeah, but it's a little more subdued in the second one.
Oh, yeah. Still assholes.
Versus the first one. The first one is pretty dark for a kid's film.
Yeah. No, I'm with you.
Yeah. And, you know, after having talked with kind of everybody about the films and learning about the conditions in the suits and how they were sweating and, you know, taking bumps and bruises. And in the first film, this was kind of a whole new world in regards to the performers and the suits and whatnot. You know, it's really impressive that they were able to pull these films off.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
I mean, I can't even think of another movie really that has 4 performers in suits the entire film.
I mean, the closest thing I can think of off the top of my head is Doug Jones in his suits in Hellboy.
Yeah, but I mean, even that, it's times 4 here.
Right. And in Doug Jones isn't like, you know, kung fuing people.
Yeah.
Which is when you have that visibility and that, like, shitty conditions inside the suit, and you're still managing to do decent to good kung fu and kicking people in the face and shit, that's some impressive shit.
I guess the only thing that actually comes close has to be the first season of The Next Generation. Because I've read tons of articles and listened to tons of interviews about how awful it was to work in those jumpsuits because they didn't get new ones, so they just basically cooked in their own sweat. And they weren't doing kung fu, but it's like 20 people. It's like the whole cast of TNG.
Yeah, but just imagine that within a giant plastic
styrofoam,
styrene head on.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Like,
I mean, these...
I think that's the point I'm trying to make, is the fact that that's the only thing that can come close to this.
Yeah.
The guys in the suits are fucking insane.
I mean, and again, the amount of... Okay, these movies would have been terrible if it were all CGI.
I don't even know if they would have been able to do something like this in the 90s.
That's my point. They couldn't, so they did the best thing possible, which is these films being able to look at on the screen, see a turtle on screen, and understand that that is a person in a suit and that is a created thing is insane, and it is awesome.
Yeah, and there are also, we're talking about how much work that's required. There are stunts in all three movies that are absurd. I mean, in the first one, Raphael gets thrown through a skylight. In the third one, Michelangelo is riding a horse and straight runs into a clothesline and falls off a horse without a cut. I mean, there are times in this movie where the people in the turtle suits really take hits for this movie.
And they're in these suits that have very little visibility. Mm-hmm. That's the most impressive part to me about the original trilogy of Turtles films is they made real life turtles. Mm-hmm. They made them. They exist. Those suits exist in reality.
Practical effects, man.
That's what makes these. That's what has made these films stand the test of time, because the turtles are real.
Yep.
I mean, they're real. That's why people meet characters at Disney World, is because they can reach out and touch them. That's exactly what this is. That's why this has kind of captured everyone's imagination, is because these are turtles. They're people who are in these suits, and yeah, we know they're in suits, but damn, it's still impressive. So at the end of the first film, Shredder gets kicked into a garbage truck or falls
off a roof into a garbage truck.
Yeah. He does a half gainer
into the back of the garbage truck.
Michelangelo, get away from there.
That was Raphael, buddy.
Oh, well, still did a Splinter voice. I told myself I wasn't going to do it, but I did it anyways. And I don't think that, obviously with how successful this film was, budget of $13 million, made box office $201.
At the time, the most successful independently produced film ever made.
That's the craziest part about this movie, it was an indie film.
Yeah. It makes it kind of astounding because if you think about it, like the practical effects for these movies, if you just look at all three of them, the practical effects for these three films are good. Like really good.
Still hold up. But basically the pinnacle of practical effects in the 90s came out the same year as the third film, Jurassic Park. If they'd had Jurassic Park kind of budget, just think of what the Turtles could have actually looked like. I'm just going to go on a limb.
It would be crazy.
I'm going to go on a limb and say that these movies in some respects are more impressive than Jurassic Park.
I agree, because instead of having like emotionless dinosaurs, however realistic looking dinosaurs, we have like emoting, walking, talking turtles.
But they're actors. They are the actors in the film.
No, I get.
Everyone else
that.
is secondary to the turtles.
Totally get that and understand that.
Yeah.
But, budget of 13 mil, Jurassic Park had a budget of 65 million, and they were able to create some of the most realistic, time-bending practical effects of the 90s.
Yeah.
If the three Turtles movies were made with that kind of money, it's baffling to me to think of what these three movies could have looked like. And that's with the statement of these three films are good.
Right. They may have done like Technodrome or, Krang or something if they had more money.
Krang.
These movies are essentially American-made kung fu movies with performers in suits.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
And the first one is very much this first film is more kind of kung fu than any of the other ones. And it's because it's just a more mature film for a more mature audience. And like John said, it's closer to the comic book, which is very dark. Mm-hmm. In the comic books, the Turtles don't even have different color bandanas.
Right. They all just wear red bandanas.
Or, well, in the original comics, it was black and white.
Right.
So they didn't even have, you couldn't even tell. So, again, the movie ends with Shredder falling into the back of a garbage truck, and the Turtles go back to the sewer, and Splinter goes, they're kind of doing the catchphrase bit again. And Splinter's like, I always liked Cowabunga. And they say Cowabunga, and that's the end of the movie.
Oh, yeah. That's good.
And then you get an awesome song. Turtle Power. Which is just like a total like 90s, just like kind of synthesizer dance. It was like a dance club song. Mm-hmm. And that's the end of the first film. It's awesome. The first film is awesome because it does everything right that you would want for the Turtles, in my mind. So I guess let's move on to the second one. Final thoughts and best performance from the first one.
I mean, good movie. I mean, you can watch this one by yourself, have a good time. Have people over, order a pizza, a couple brews, and just chill and have a great time watching it. Best performance, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go with Elias Koteas. Casey Jones is probably. I'm not gonna say he's my favorite character, but I really like what he did with the character. It's a little. His job was a little bit more easier to emote and interact, I guess, because of who his character was.
Just a little.
Yeah. Lack of the suit makes it way easier.
Being in the suits is just a little easier.
Especially since it's him and his voice. The only thing that I think sets the Turtles apart is the fact that it's someone else doing the voice and someone else in the suit, and that just comes with the territory of because you can't hear people in the suit. So
they got servos and stuff in the head.
Yeah.
Except for which one? Which one in this movie was the voice and the body?
Raphael, Josh.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, I mean that just means that he got to do voiceover work after they filmed. Is essentially how that is. So with Elias doing, his voice, his actions, things like that. I'm going to go with Elias.
For me, final thoughts is definitely watch it. These movies are awesome. I'm going to say watch it for all three of the live actions. Just heads up. I think best performance, I'm going to go with Josh Pace. Pace.
I
think it's
however you say it.
Just like I don't know how to say Elias Koteas either. We could sit here and come up with 5 different ways to say it. So.
Right. So the guy who was the voice and body of Raphael and also the passenger in the cab.
Yeah.
Because at one point Raphael rolls across a fucking taxi cab hood, and then it cuts to inside the cab, and the passenger in the cab is like, "What was that?" And the cabbie is like, "It looked like a giant turtle."
He's like, "Where are you going, LaGuardia? Get me out of here!" I guess that's one thing we forgot to point out is all of the guys who are in the suits, Josh Pace, Michelin Sisti, Leif Tilden, and David Foreman, are in the movie. They cameo as out of the suit.
John mentioned that at the beginning.
Yeah.
That stuff's funny. Because John mentioned the guy in the suit for Michelangelo delivers the pizza to Michelangelo. There's a lot of goofy, funny shit like that. It's great.
Yeah. For me, I'm going to say watch it. It's definitely, again, having not watched it as a kid, or having not watched it as an adult, and now watching it for the first time, and it literally has to have been at least 10 years. 10, 15 years at least. I was pleasantly surprised because I didn't have really nostalgic memories of it growing up. Again, the second one is the one that really stood out for me. It's really good. It's a really good movie. It's totally just a kung fu movie with turtles in it, which is the best way of saying it's trying to kind of sell this idea to someone. Best performance, I know I'm breaking my own rules, but I'm going to go with all of the people that were involved in making the Turtles.
Pick it more than one.
I have to.
Wait, so do you mean...
Because right out of the gate, the fact that you got 4 people to sit in these suits for an entire filming of the film in South Carolina, I want to say, which is unbearably hot and humid, and you got them to sit in these suits for an entire filming of a film is insane. And then the having to do the puppetry, and then the voices, Josh Pace obviously in the suit, but that's still impressive. I think the whole kind of creation of the Turtles needs to be applauded for all these films.
Mm-hmm. And by the way, the suits were made in the Jim Henson
Yeah, we didn't even
Magic
talk
Factory.
about that. Yeah, we didn't even talk about that. But the first two films, the suits are made by, the pioneer of puppetry, Jim Henson, and his Creature Factory, Creature Studio. And it shows because, I think that this is a really tall order to have 4 full body suits that are the actors for the whole film.
With animatronic faces.
Yeah. And then you have people who are in the actor suits, and then you have Ernie Reyes Jr., who was in the stunt suit for Donatello. those guys need to be applauded as well. this whole thing was a massive undertaking. So I think that for me, I kind of wanted to say that they're my my MVPs, best performance, but they're the best performance I think in all 3 of the movies, hands down. So I don't have to say it again.
Right.
Best human performance outside of the suit. It's like 2 people. 3, I guess. I'm gonna go with Elias Koteas as well. I can't not, because I wish Casey Jones was in the second film, but I'm glad we got Ernie Reyes Jr. instead.
Because Kino's an awesome pairing with the Turtles.
Yeah. So speaking of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, let's kind of transition to that one. Came out in 1991. The subtitle of the film is Secret of the Ooze. Features kind of a mix-up of the cast. Again, we talked about Judith Hoag was in the first one as April. She's not in the second. This movie focuses more on how the Turtles came to be, not where the Turtles came from. And it pits them against 2 mutants created by Shredder.
Tokar and Razor.
Yeah. Toka and Razor are awesome. What do you think of this one, Swan?
I liked it. We talked about it a little bit while we talked about the first one. It's hard. I will admit, it's hard to talk about any one of these 3 films independently of the other one. Because most of the comments you make about one can be applied to most of them. This one's obviously more kid-oriented. A lot of good jokes.
They don't even use their weapons in this film.
I think Leo sticks his swords in the ceiling once and uses them to kick someone.
Yeah, this is definitely more kicking and punching, and I think that lends itself to Ernie Reyes Jr. some too because of his skill set. All in all, though, it's a good, funny movie. It's another one that you can order a pizza, grab a fruit brews, have a good time with.
What about you, John?
All I have to say about this is, yeah.
You bastard, you stole it from me. God.
This movie used to be my favorite of the 3 live actions, but I think rewatching it this time around, this go through, I think that may have changed. I still love the second movie, and it definitely has the best scene of all of them, which is for what that line is from. They're fighting in like a little strip mall type thing. I don't even know what it's called. It's
a kind of an underground mall type thing,
right?
Like a strip mall,
right? And
I've never seen those in the States. That's like a thing that I've seen in like when I've been abroad. Like that's not something I've ever seen in the States.
Yeah, so. I've never seen one of them either. But so there's a bunch of dudes. There's like 40 dudes stealing shit. And Donatello is in the mall fighting people, and he sees one of those little inflatable clowns that like you tip over and it comes back up. And he's like, yeah, as he pushes the little inflatable thing. And then one of the thieves runs into the room, and Donatello is standing there as the little inflatable dude. And the thief pushes him, and he like tilts over and then comes back up and pokes the thief in the face. And it's just like... that scene is awesome. And that whole fight scene in that mall is probably one of the better fights of all the movies. And that's without the Turtles using their weapons. And then, it's also got the Vanilla Ice in it, which is awesome.
Not Vanilla Ice, the Vanilla Ice.
Right. even though one of his bodyguards, almost got the shit kicked out of him. All the stuntmen. Oh, man. But, I think overall this movie is awesome. I like it better than the first one. It's more comedy. I think the fact that they couldn't use their weapons required them to come up with more humor than the first one did. And so this one's funnier than the first one.
Yeah, this is my favorite turtle film, hands down, out of all of them. It's awesome. Everything about it. You know, I actually think that the fact that they didn't get Corey Feldman to do the voice of Donatello is kind of works. I don't know why, but Donatello in this movie doesn't have kind of that nasal voice. He's probably my favorite part of the film. I know everybody loves Mikey because Mikey's funny as hell.
Because he's the best one. That's why everyone loves him.
No, everyone loves him because he's the funny one.
Everyone loves him because he's the best.
And no one loves Leonardo. No love for Leonardo, ever. I've never heard someone say Leonardo's my favorite turtle.
I know one person that said that, and as soon as he said it, I was like, what is wrong with you?
And, you know, I think that's unfortunate. I think that in kind of all the turtle movies, Leonardo is kind of the underserved turtle exposition-wise.
Yeah, he's like the responsible one. He's sort of the buzzkill. That's why most people don't pick Leo as their favorite turtle.
Right. I mean, this movie has some really great bits, like John was talking about at the beginning with the fighting in the strip mall, or then the fight in the construction site where they're offering up Toka and Razor, the traditional pre-fight donut. I mean, everything about this movie in my mind is just memorable and classic and just screams 90s. You know, and I think that the fact that this is more for kids, as you know, as you would put it, I guess. I mean, I don't know really if it's more for kids. It's just less dark than the first one. I don't know if that really helped sell it to me as a kid, but I think that the humor of this movie is what kind of makes it for me. Mm-hmm. And if the first movie had been funnier than the second one, that might have been the case, you know. I mean, you know, it's not like you see Leonardo stabbing people with his swords in the first one anyways.
Right, but he does hit people, and then they make a point of showing that they're alive.
Yeah. So let's talk about the turtles a little bit in this one. In this one, the turtle suit performers, Leif Tilden is Donatello, Ken Scott is Raphael, Mark Queso is Leonardo, and Michelin Sisti is Michelangelo again. What do you guys think of the turtles kind of this go round?
I think they may have worked better in this one. I think it's probably just, you know, for the ones that came back from the first movie, it's probably a experience working in the suits and doing the stuff. I think the animators maybe had a little bit better feel for the animatronics in this one. I don't know. I think the turtles themselves work better in this one than in the first one overall.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think that their chemistry on screen is better. I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, in the, you know, obviously in the suit, you know, they had you know, two different performers in the suits this go around as opposed to the first film. I'm not sure how much that really lent itself to the way that they were reacting to one another on set, but I think that the turtles as a unit work better in this film, like you said, John. So like I said, we had an interview with Ken Scott, who was in the suit for Raphael. So we'll play that interview. And when we get back, we'll talk more about the turtles and some of the human performers. How did you get involved with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles franchise?
I got my start in Ninja Turtles because I lived in North Carolina and they were shooting those movies there. And I have a whole life story about an obsession of wanting to be an action hero in the movies and things I did and how I took karate and acting as a kid. And I moved down to Wilmington, North Carolina, where they had a movie studio, and I was working as an extra, just hustling my butt off to try to break into the movies. I wanted to be the next Jean-Claude Van Damme. And then I met a group who was in charge of casting the extras. They found out I was a martial artist, and they said, hey, we've got this movie coming called Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and we're looking for local martial artists who can play bad guys and get beat up. This was, you know, the late 80s. Not too many people had really heard of the Ninja Turtles at this point. The cartoon hadn't broken or anything.
Right.
And I thought, man, this is my big break. I'm going to go do it. I'm going to get paid $75 a day, and I'm going to go see if I can get hired to try to get beat up. So I went and auditioned, and ultimately I auditioned for Pat Johnson, the stunt coordinator, and had to do all these fight things. And ultimately I got the job. I got the job as one of the foot soldiers. So not many people know this, but when you watch the first Ninja Turtles, when they all break into April's apartment and Michelangelo goes, oh, a fellow chucker, eh? And they do the nunchuck back and forth. I'm actually the guy in black doing the nunchucks opposite Michelangelo. So when you see a lot of the various foot soldiers throughout the movie, that's what I was originally hired to be, was one of the main foot soldiers.
Right.
But very early on in the film, the stunt guy who is doubling for for Raphael, and as many people know, the turtles were all played by 4 different people. There was an actor in one suit, a stunt guy, a puppeteer, and a voice.
Right.
Well, on the first film, in the scene where Casey Jones hits Raphael with the hockey stick or the cricket bat, and Raphael flies through the air and falls headfirst into the trash can, when they held this poor little stunt guy up from Hong Kong and dropped him headfirst into that trash can, the helmet came down and broke his nose, and from that point forward, he couldn't wear the turtle helmet anymore and portray Raphael. So they went to the stunt department, they went to Pat Johnson, they said, right away, we need somebody who can be Raphael. We've got all these fight things to do. What are we going to do? And he turned around and he looked, and I guess I was the right height and I had the right skill set. So at that point, they said, do you want to be Raphael? And I said, absolutely. And that was how I sort of made my way to becoming Raphael. Yeah, it was as Pat Johnson said, it was a fortuitous beginning.
Right.
There was a lot of hard work that went into it. I went through a lot to get myself in that position, a lot of practice. I wrote letters to people to try to get my aims accomplished, and a lot of great details happened that we don't really necessarily have time to go into right now, but that all kind of made everything that I needed to happen to propel myself into Hollywood happen on Ninja Turtles. It was a great experience.
Wow. So we spoke with Leif Tilden, who played Donatello in the first film, and he was in the Donatello suit. What was it kind of like working with Leif?
Leif was a character. Not only does Leif have a very unique and compelling voice, which I think propelled him on to being the voice of one of the M&Ms at one point. But Leif, who I haven't seen in years, and I'm looking forward to seeing soon at the upcoming comic expos that we're doing in Tulsa on May 22nd to the 24th. But Leif was a real character, and he kind of had a different perspective on the world, at least the way he kind of talked. And so for me, as a young, impressionable guy who was just from coming out of North Carolina and getting my first big break on a Hollywood movie, to be around Leif, who had an eccentric artistic quality about him, was really at times very entertaining and sometimes even kind of intimidating.
Right.
So I had a great experience kind of hanging out with Leif, getting to know him at least what I was able to get to know on the film, and always looked forward to my time around him.
And we also spoke to Ernie Reyes Jr., who obviously played Kino in TMNT 2, and we'll get to that here in a little bit, because that's obviously, that interaction is, obviously on screen. You guys spend like a good part of the film together. In the first film, he was in the Donatello stunt suit. Did you have any kind of interaction with him while he was in the Donatello stunt suit?
Yeah, Ernie and I work together all the time. There's actually a very sort of, how can I say it? Ernie and I work together all the time. There's a picture floating around the internet of 3 of us in our turtle suits after having just worked outside in the humidity and heat of North Carolina. We all have our heads off. It's me, Ernie, and a stuntman who was known as Mo sitting with us. He was Leonardo's stunt double. And we all just looked completely a mess. But Ernie was very, very young on that first movie, and he was carrying a lot of weight in terms of what they were asking him to do. He was the only American stunt turtle on the film when it started.
Right.
All the others were the super highly respected kung fu, super flying stunt guys. And here was Ernie, a young American kid, who could keep up with them and do the kind of stuff. So not only was he amazingly talented and could pull all that stuff off, but he also had a real calm demeanor about him. It was very difficult working in turtle suits. You can't breathe. It's hot. You sweat. It's a really aggravating process. But Ernie always just remained really cool, really calm and collected. And I remember hearing Pat Johnson, the stunt coordinator, at one point, he said something like, Ernie never complains. You never hear a bad word come out of that kid's mouth, not one time. So it was a great experience to work all around his positive energy. And I came up in the karate competitive ranks when I was a young teenager. Ernie was a little bit younger than me, but we actually would encounter each other sometimes at tournaments. So to see him go through his whole progression from being in The Last Dragon and on what was that show with Buck Rogers, Gil Gerard, The Electric Knight or whatever, and in Red Sonja and all that stuff. So to see all the things that Ernie's done with his career has just been amazing. It's been awesome. He's a great guy.
Yeah, that was something I kind of talked about with Ernie is, the conditions inside the suit. How much did the conditions inside the suit affect your kind of, because obviously this is in the second film you were in the suit. In the first film you were in the suit. Obviously you told me a little bit. What was it like performing in the suit versus outside the suit in the first and second film?
Working in a Ninja Turtle suit and having to do everything that is done in those movies is extremely complex and challenging. Because what happens is you can take the greatest martial artist that you've got, and they can jump and kick and do splits and back handsprings. But once you put a restrictive foam rubber spacesuit all around them that brings their body temperature up, and you're constantly sweating all day long. I mean, pounds and pounds of water are running through your body as you keep drinking and sweating and drinking and sweating. Your vision is limited, so you only have tunnel vision. So what's ordinarily like a very sort of kinesthetic art of movement and awareness, you're not only encumbering that martial artist, but then you're taking away their vision. So to ask them to challenge at a level in which they appear to the eye to be super reptilian kung fu warriors,
right?
That's a hard task. It's like asking an Olympic athlete who does high jumping to do it with a scuba suit on.
Right.
So it was really challenging, and there's a lot of things people don't think about. The first question people always ask you when they find out if you're a Ninja Turtle was it hot in that suit? And the answer is yes, it was super hot in that suit. You were also limited by vision, but also within the mouths, there was a fake a rubber teeth and tongue that actually went right in front of your own mouth and nose. And so basically, after just a couple of minutes of breathing, much less aggressive movements, you would fill up your little turtle head with carbon dioxide and really have nothing left to breathe. So you're constantly struggling for air. So at times on the set, it wasn't uncommon for guys to suffer nosebleeds from a dehydration. I remember specifically one guy had passed out in his suit at one time, and another guy threw up in his suit.
Oh, God. That was something Ernie had spoken to us about, and I wanted to ask you about. When you were in the suit in the second film, had they kind of gotten the formula down as to how to treat the talent in the suits versus in the first film?
Well, I don't know if that was a question of anybody's process changing in terms of what we were doing from one movie to the other. I think if you look at the culture of filmmaking, when you look at number one, you had a very Hong Kong influenced production taking place, where there was stunt guys from Hong Kong working very closely with Pat Johnson to create these incredible fight scenes. And Hong Kong cinema certainly is known, at least previous to the days of bringing immigrant directors over, of really having its own bold, ballistic, hardcore style. So a little bit of that filmmaking principle was there, that philosophy in the first movie. And so there were guys doing a lot of amazing things. Having worked on many, many action films over my career, I don't ever look back at Ninja Turtles #1 and ever think to myself, wow, a lot of people got hurt on that movie, or it was odd, or anything like that. So I don't necessarily have a perspective of thinking of one where a lot of people got hurt because, I don't know if you're aware, there was a situation on the second movie where some turtles fell down when the cargo net in the junkyard broke. And the turtles fell 6, 8 feet, whatever it was, but they all fell to the ground. And, a lot of guys got hurt. One guy got split crushed and another guy hurt his back. So people got hurt on that movie. Even, that situation to me was even more sort of like a worse situation than anything I saw in the first film. I don't know if that's really addressing anything you're saying in particular, but I will say this. Let me go back to your original question. In terms of treating the people in the suits, when it came from the action, it was what it was. It was a hardcore Hong Kong film to begin with, and then it became more Americanized when the second one rolled around. But in terms of treating the actors and the stunt guys in the suits, they were more aware on the second film about how to cater to the needs of the performers. They were more aware that it was going to be super hot. They were more aware about how dehydrated people were going to become. They were more aware, and they knew that they needed to build these special suits for us to sit on as turtles so that we could rest a certain way. So in ways, they figured out some things on how to do it. They never, because the suit technology that we were doing, it was more advanced than what it was going on at the time. So they didn't have, at the time, they did not integrate the cold suit and the ice. There's sort of these cooling ice vests that you can wear.
Right.
They actually tried to cram a couple into some guy's suits to see if it would help. But at that point, because the suits were all form-fitted to each performer's body, there was just no way for it. It was making it worse than it was better. So in some ways, there were some improvements. But it was an action-packed movie no matter what. So I think guys were getting little bruises and here and there, but that happens on an action film.
Right. So let's kind of talk about TMNT 2 a little bit. Obviously, you played Raphael in the suit. Did your work on the first film, and like you said, you were in the first film, you were in the suit a little bit. Did that more or less guarantee you a spot in the second film in the Raphael suit?
No, because of completing Raphael as the stunt guy in the first one, I was not guaranteed the position of being Raphael in the second one. I certainly hoped and prayed, but first of all, when the movie ends, you have no idea that a second one is coming.
Right.
Because at that point, the movie, nobody knew what it was going to do, and then it became the biggest independent film up to that time of all time. So just a couple of months after it opened, I got a call from Pat Johnson, the stunt coordinator, and Pat said to me, Ken, would you like to be Raphael's stunt double in the second movie? And I was like, well, yes, absolutely. I mean, so here it was, somebody was handing me a dream job right there. I wasn't an actor, but I was a stunt guy, but still, it was a great thing. Well, at some point, I said to Pat something akin to, hey, Pat, my ultimate goal is to go to Hollywood and be an actor, so if there's any way I can work my way into being the actor turtle, I'd be interested in that. And, of course, Pat, being the fatherly guy he was like, well, be happy with what you got. I was like, okay, fine.
Right.
Well, it was not long after that I got a phone call from Pat Johnson, and maybe I shouldn't say that. I don't want to get Pat in trouble, but I think the statute of limitations is up. Pat called me and he just said, hey, Ken, I got a tip for you. The actor who portrayed Raphael in the first movie is not coming back for the second movie. And then he hung up the phone. And I was like, okay, what do I do? So I got in touch with the producers, David Chan from Golden Harvest. I was in North Carolina at this time. I called him in Los Angeles, and I said, hey, David, this is Ken Scott, and I'm looking forward to working with you guys on Ninja Turtles. But I just wanted you to know that I'm interested in playing the actor turtle if that chance ever came up, because that's what I want to do. And he said, well, Ken, funny you should say that, or whatever his words were, but we're actually auditioning people out here. And, so if you want to join in, that's fine. I was like, oh, well, I'm in North Carolina, you're in California. What can I do? So he said to me, here's what I want you to do, Ken. I want you to pick a couple of scenes from the first movie, and I want you to act them out as if you were Raphael, and I want you to videotape that and send it to me. And I said, okay, I can do that, no problem. So I called my friend Tony up, and Tony came over, and I put on the only piece of clothing I had that I thought was the most turtle-like. It was a green polo shirt. I put on a green polo shirt. I went and stood in my front yard. My friend Tony turned on the video camera. At that time, it's probably a VHS camera, I think.
Right.
And I'm going, hey, dude, what's happening? You got a problem with me? And I'm throwing my arms up and around, and I'm trying to act like this puppet character, Raphael. And so we get it on tape. I pull out the tape. I address it. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to call Federal Express, because he had just called me back and said, Ken, you got to send this to me overnight, because we're doing auditions on Monday. I have to have it as quick as possible. I was like, no problem. I'll send it to him overnight. Called FedEx, called UPS, whatever. It turns out it was Memorial Day, and I couldn't get him anything that fast. So I went to the airport. I went up to Delta Airlines. I said, I need you to get this to Los Angeles. My dreams are in this envelope. Please get this to David Chan's office tomorrow. How much is it going to cost? They said, we can get it there. It'll be $155. I said, okay, I'll pay it.
Wow.
I already figured I already had the job as the stunt guy, so I knew that I'd make a little money. But don't forget, I'm just a kid out of college who made a little bit of money on Ninja Turtles, so every little bit helped.
Right.
So ultimately, I sent the video in. I got a call back from David Chan. He said, Ken, we got your videotape. We're going to watch it. but I want you to know we got about 60 other guys we're going to audition out here.
60?
And I was like, yeah. I was like super depressed. And I was like, all right, well, I consoled myself by saying, well, at least I know I'll be Raphael's stunt double, and I can make a SAG weekly wage as a stunt guy, and it'll be great. And then I'll move to Los Angeles after it's over. And I just waited. A couple of weeks went by, and out of nowhere, I got a phone call from David Chan, and he said, Ken, congratulations. You're the new Raphael. You need to fly to London and go get your suit made at the Henson Creature Shop. And I was like, woohoo! So that's kind of how it all transpired in a little condensed format. But, yeah, man, I was just in North Carolina working. Next thing you know, I'm hustling onto this set, and then I find myself flying to London and meeting the Henson family. It was great.
And what was that like, getting to meet, the icon, Jim Henson?
Well, I only briefly met Jim Henson with a handshake and a how do you do. And that was very fortunate because it wasn't too long ago, or it wasn't too long right after that he passed away.
Right.
But I mostly interacted with his son, Brian,
right,
who now has obviously moved on and rules the empire. And Brian was a great guy. Brian was a super funny guy. And he was the second unit director, and he was in charge of all the sort of muppetry, if you will, that was going on the set. And Brian and I got to know each other, so that was fun. What was really awesome was going to London and going to the Henson Creature Shop. And the Henson Creature Shop, I don't know, every kid or even an adult, you can only imagine what that means, but like some sort of Willy Wonka place that you're going to walk into. And when you walk into it, it's just this nondescript kind of warehouse place, and you walk in, and you feel like you're standing in somebody's workspace garage. There's just stuff in every corner and mashed up against it, and there's no Ferris wheels or roller coasters or, stars on the ceiling. It's just like there's some eyeballs in a drawer over there, and there's some old Muppet stuff in the corner over there. But it's so magical because you got all these people talking with English accents like you're in some kind of Hobbit world, and they're in there working and making all this stuff, and you go down to the basement, and I stood in the exact same place where David Bowie stood to get his suit made for Labyrinth. It's in the basement of the Creature Shop, and basically you stand in this little cement room, and they almost crucify you. They tie a loop around each one of your wrists, raise your wrists up out to the side, tie them up to the ceiling, and then these like 4 or 5 Cockney English guys in plaster suits just cover you with hot plaster all over your body, all over your face, everything, and then just make a statue of you. And then they sculpt the turtle suits out of clay on top of that statue and everything. But what a magical experience going into that crazy kind of place. All the videotapes of all the shows they made were there. It was cool. So the Muppet, getting to know the people from the Henson organization it was like a dream come true, growing up on the Sesame Street and the Muppet Show.
And how long were you in London for that whole process?
I went to London twice, once to get where they first make the statue of you, and then the second time to actually try on the suit that they've then made since they made the little statue of you.
Right.
So each time the trips were only 3 or 4 days or so. They're just brief ins and outs. Got a little bit of a chance to experience the city, but certainly not as much as a tourist. But then again, experienced it in a really magical Hogwarts kind of way.
Right. So kind of describe to me what it was like the first time you went and tried the suit on, knowing that you were going to be, the man in the second film.
Well, everything about the Ninja Turtles process for me was the evolutionary steps of my dreams coming true.
Right.
So every single step was so filled with joy and wonder that no one is really more describable than the next. There were certainly moments of agony in the physical production of these movies, but at the same time, just the act of getting off a plane at Heathrow and being driven into, having never been to England before, being driven to the Henson Creature Shop, meeting all the people there, seeing all the magic about the place, and then showing up and then sort of unveiling like this suit, and your statue and your form is everywhere. It's like Christmases and birthdays and New Year's and Hanukkah and everything all rolled into one. And
right.
You're just opening it up. It's just great. It's as I imagine Chris Evans feels when he put on his Captain America outfit, or, like Robert Downey Jr. already had a majorly successful career at that point when he did Iron Man.
Right.
So that may be a different experience. But it wasn't just the portrayal of a cool character. For me, it was the steps of unfolding my journey to becoming a professional filmmaker and actor and all that stuff. So
Right.
super fantastic, magical experience.
And when you put that suit on and you looked in the mirror, was that just like, here goes another step in my career?
I'll be honest with you. I don't remember the actual thoughts that were going through my head at the time. You're talking about so much excitement compressed into a 9-week period for the first movie, and then the second movie, again, like just 12 weeks of so many experiences of just working with legends and working with Vanilla Ice and doing this and meeting that person and this and that I remember each step being the unfolding of, yes, here's the next step in my career. There ain't no stopping me now.
Right.
I kept thinking that. I kept thinking of that, even sometimes to my own detriment.
Right. So once you had the suit, kind of what was it like being on set in the second film versus the first film?
Well, my personal experience had a couple of levels from the first movie to the second. One was I went from working in the stunt department to working with first unit. I went from second unit to first unit. And that certainly doesn't differentiate them in any sort of social hierarchy, but just in terms of filmmaking, you've got the director and everybody working first unit, and stunts are second unit. And the second unit, as run by Pat Johnson on the first movie, and ultimately the second movie as well, is like it's like an army squad. It's like an army platoon. There's camaraderie, there's leadership, you're exercising and training all the time, but there's also a tremendous amount of downtime because they're not always shooting, fighting. A lot of action is going on, but foot soldiers themselves had a lot of opportunity to sort of spend the days practicing, waiting, working on their craft.
Right.
The second movie, when I went from being in the stunt department to being in the acting department, was the first unit work is basically nonstop. Because in the Ninja Turtle movies, they tried to shoot 2 units simultaneously all the time because the shooting schedule was so short, they wanted to get as much footage as they could. So the first unit with the puppeteers and the animated suits and all that stuff, we were constantly working. There was never that much downtime, if at all. And if there ever was, it seemed to disappear very quickly because of some emergent scene they had to shoot or something.
Right.
So the intensity of work was much greater in terms of the sort of marathon aspect of it versus on the first movie, when you're doing stunts and fighting, you're talking about intensive bursts of physical energy, encumbered by suits and vision and all that stuff. So that's equally challenging, but they were challenging kind of in their own ways. One in short-term anaerobic bursts and one just in long-term survival skills.
When you were on set, were you also saying the Raphael lines, or were you just kind of walking and doing the body acting?
Well, there was a combination of things going on. We spent a long time when we first got to London. We got to work with the puppeteers early on to try to blend our performances together.
Right.
Because ultimately the puppeteers are responsible for the face, and it's their speaking of the lines that dictates the way the turtle's face is speaking the lines. So I remember specifically, I believe Leif in particular used to say every single line like right in time with his puppeteer, Marty. I seem to recall that. I mean, we're going back 25 years now. When I worked with David, my puppeteer, we got into a thing where I wasn't necessarily speaking the lines. I would do it occasionally, especially when we had to get timing down so we could speak to one another through our communication devices. But ultimately, I became the harmonious body to what was his face and voice.
Gotcha. So, what was, in your mind, and like you said, this is, 25 years ago, the second movie is kind of more jam-packed with stuff and people and big names. Did you enjoy working on the set of the first film or the second film more?
For me, at my level, my experience in working on both films was different, but equally rewarding because, again, they were part of an evolutionary process for me. Ninja Turtles was my first job on a big Hollywood movie, and Ninja Turtles 2 was my second big job on a Hollywood movie, even though they were shot in North Carolina. So for me, each one was sort of a greater unfolding, a greater crashing of the tidal wave. I will say that as somebody who was both in the stunt department and then in the quote-unquote acting department, there was a lot more media attention on the acting department, especially with the momentum of the success of the first one. A lot more people were covering the second one. Barbara Walters interviewed us for her Academy Award special. A lot of other press came from all over the country to visit the set of the movie while it was being shot.
Right.
And that didn't happen at all in the first one because nobody knew about it at that time. So as Raphael in the second movie, as the actor, I received a lot more attention from the sort of public eye and reporters and stuff like that. And certainly that feeds your ego, and it felt great, and I loved it. And the stunt department doesn't quite get so much of that attention, even though they contribute, an amazing amount to the film as well.
Right.
So, I had a great time on both of them, but I certainly did enjoy that second one a lot more. It felt like the next step in a way.
Right. So in the second film, you and Ernie Reyes Jr. spend a fair amount of time on screen together towards the kind of middle half of the film when you guys are infiltrating the Foot Clan kind of hideout. What was it like working with Ernie on the second film?
I enjoyed working with Ernie. Again, I think Ernie was part of an amazing career that started when he was young and just has sort of continued throughout his life. He's always showing up in, again, movies with Arnold Schwarzenegger and movies with The Rock and here and there. And I was aware of Ernie. So to see Ernie get this opportunity was certainly, I respected him as a martial artist and somebody who always set out to achieve his goals. So it was exciting to watch that happen. Working with him, certainly I was sweating in that turtle suit all the time. And it was a lot of fun because Ernie knew exactly what I was going through. So he was very sympathetic to what I was feeling and what was happening and all that kind of stuff. So he sort of allowed me whatever time or space I needed to recover after, exceptional times, concentrated movements and stuff like that, because it gets hot down there in North Carolina. So it was cool working with Ernie. Again, he was a great guy. I think Ernie was certainly really working hard because he was, again, getting the opportunity to work as an actor. And I know that's something that's been a big part of him, again, ever since he was a kid. So you're always carrying a lot of weight and responsibility and accountability with that. And sometimes Ernie wasn't necessarily as carefree as he was as a stunt guy because he had a lot more to think about.
Right.
And ended up doing a good job and went on to make Surf Ninjas out of that relationship.
Yeah.
So it was great. And
you mentioned, that the films were filmed in North Carolina. I personally find that to be a strange choice, filming a film with people in giant suits which I was assuming was filmed in the hotter, more humid parts of the year in North Carolina. Just from the kind of everything I've heard being, everybody's sweating and hot. I find that to be kind of a strange choice.
Well, I think certainly not everybody thinks about, how can I say that? Let me start over there. We were doing something that hadn't really been done.
Right.
At that point, there were no kung fu, reptile-suited, any kind of suited movies being made with that sort of workforce and resources required. So as the original filmmakers, who are well known for being economical filmmakers and were looking for the easiest and most economical way to make these films, again, don't forget, the first Ninja Turtle film, I believe, was made for a budget of about $8 million.
Right, it's an indie
film.
In this day and age, it's an indie film.
Yeah, and it was an indie film then, too.
Right.
It was put together, by just a couple of guys from Golden Harvest, and they found Bob Shea over at New Line, and they put together the deal, and they were like $8 million. And originally, they had ideas that, they were going to have Chevy Chase in like a rubber suit where you could see his face, and they were going to try and get Saturday Night Live people, and They couldn't figure out how to do it until these guys from Golden Harvest said, no, let's make it like a real kung fu movie.
Right.
So anyway, when Golden Harvest and New Line decided to make it, they wanted to be as economical as possible. This was a time when the movie studio in North Carolina was emerging as the East Coast Hollywood, so to speak. Dino De Laurentiis had built a big movie studio down there and shot a lot of movies like Firestarter and Raw Deal with Arnold Schwarzenegger and Maximum Overdrive with Emilio Estevez. So there was a working cottage industry of filmmaking in North Carolina, and a great place to go. And they still do a lot of stuff there. Dawson's Creek, I think, was a whole series down there. Anyway, it goes on and on. But they just picked it because it was inexpensive, it was accessible, there was airports nearby, and we went there, and you're exactly right. Nobody thought, hey, it's September in North Carolina, it's hot and humid, let's put these guys in these suits and go out in these fields.
Right.
So, they did their best. We had some oxygen tanks standing by and all the Gatorade you could drink, and nobody died, so we made it. Filmmaking, nobody said it was easy.
Right, yeah. Everything good always comes with a little bit of sacrifice, or a bit of sacrifice. So, is there any kind of, stories or anecdotes that stick out in your mind from working on the second film?
So when I got the opportunity to meet Barbara Walters, the only thing I knew of her was her TV persona and Gilda Radner's impersonation of her on Saturday Night Live, Baba Wawa. And so I didn't know much about her, didn't know what to think about her, certainly thought she was, I don't know, I didn't have any, I thought she might be a highfalutin celebrity, who knew? So she came on the set, and we were working, and again, it's hard work being a turtle. You are sweating and breathing carbon dioxide, and even if you're not moving, it's just physically grueling to be inside that suit for the 6 hours of time or whatever it is. So as we're working, we're talking to Barbara, we're trying to do all this improv, we're doing our stuff. A few hours in, it's time to take a break, and we all take our turtle heads off. And that's the moment when the steam rises from our heads, and you see our reddened cheeks, and we're so just worn out, it's obvious. And Barbara Walters, somebody had just walked up to her and handed her a plastic-wrapped sandwich. And she looked at me, and she goes, "You look so exhausted." And I was like, yeah, it's a little bit of work. Something I kind of brushed it off. And she pulled out this turkey sandwich, this homemade little turkey sandwich that she was eating, and she held out half, and she said, "Would you like half my sandwich?" And I was like, "No, but thank you very much." And from that moment on, I just fell in love with Barbara Walters. She was totally awesome with me.
It's great. So, aside from kind of the press, the increased press for the second film, what was it like getting to work with, like Vanilla Ice?
In Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles #2, the presence of Vanilla Ice on set was a little bit abrasive to all the guys that were doing the turtle work and playing the turtles. And the reason for that, and I went on to find this out in greater scale in other parts of Hollywood, is when you're doing suit work and you're a puppeteer and you're behind the scenes and people cannot attribute value to your face, you become a commoditized worker, and you can almost be replaced with ease. And I think there was a general sense among the guys who portrayed the turtles that there was a feeling that it took some special skill and understanding and a little bit of artistic investment into doing it, that we felt like we were treated more like commoditized workers. And when Vanilla Ice showed up, he was treated with amazing aplomb and all kinds of fanfare. And he actually, I think, celebrated his 21st or 22nd birthday on the set. And there was an impromptu birthday party for him and all that kind of stuff. And unfortunately, he didn't really interact too much with us. So we didn't really get to know him well. He was certainly a guy that had a lot of energy and doing his thing. And was a bold and interesting choice to be in the second movie.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I can imagine the thought that the guys in the suits are, what you were talking about. I think that's unfortunate. But I mean, from everything that everyone that I've talked to, this wasn't some, just go get a random guy off the street type thing. It's these, you have to know what you're doing.
Well, yes, again, as turtles now, and certainly I think the culture has been more educated with the advent of Power Rangers, and people are more aware now of superheroes and stunts and behind-the-scenes films and all that kind of stuff. I just don't think that, the people who are in charge of the purse strings try to save money wherever they can.
Right.
And sometimes that's saved by denying certain comforts to other people that, you know, may work underneath you.
Mm-hmm.
And it felt at certain times, like as Turtles, that we were unnecessarily challenged in some of the minutia of the day, whether it came to having air conditioning in particular places so that we could cool off, or oxygen on the set so that we could make sure we could breathe after a scene. Sometimes it was hard to get things that we felt were just to do based on our work.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, again, everything about this, from the worst, you know, pain of feeling like I was going to pass out, to the joys of getting the call that I'm the new Raphael and meeting Barbara Walters, all of this is just a fantastic, amazing experience. I mean, it really is.
Right.
It was just great. I mean, it's been, for me, as far as the general public is concerned, it's the single most defining factor of my life. You know, more people know me as Raphael and the Ninja Turtle, and there's been more outreach from my little just world into everywhere else based on being Raphael. So it's opened tremendous doors. It's allowed me to do great things through fundraising and events and publicity and just, I mean, everything.
Right.
You know, I love it.
Well,
it's good to be Raphael.
Yeah, I can only imagine. You know, and you're talking about the, you know, the kind of the way this process has kind of evolved with this is a really kind of a comic book movie thing, because Teenage Ninja Turtles based off of a comic, and now comic book movies have really become the multi-billion-dollar industry that they weren't in the 90s. So, you know, that evolution, you know, is really evident when you watch a film like Teenage Ninja Turtles, and then you go and watch like a movie like Captain America or The Avengers, where these were very kind of smaller budget films that were made in the 90s, and now it's this huge thing that they, you know, got to make sure everything is in order for everybody all the time.
Yeah, I think there was a sine wave, actually. And the sine wave sort of consisted of the first superhero movies to really launch were Superman, and then subsequently, the first superhero movies to launch were Superman, and then subsequently Batman.
Right.
And those were huge studio films. And then what happened was sort of the late 80s and 90s came around, and the independent film world boomed. And that's when there were all kinds of movies being made at all budgetary levels by myriad producers all over the country and selling them to foreign markets. Movies with Don the Dragon Wilson, and movies made by Roger Corman, and all kinds of movies with action heroes in them. You know, Roger Corman even made a version of the Fantastic Four, which is, you cannot find. You're lucky if you can ever find a copy of the original Fantastic Four by Roger Corman's company. I've seen it.
I've seen it as well. I mean, it's okay. If you go to the like comic book conventions, there's always a guy bootleg copy selling them. Right. That's right. You know, underground bootleg stuff.
So there was a period where went from Superman and Batman as big as it could be to these kinds of 90s B grade whatever. And born out of that, again, that hardcore action kung fu mentality came Golden Harvest. And they said, hey, we'll make a superhero movie about these crazy turtles.
Right.
And for $8 million, they made a movie that became so huge that, once again, it kind of awakened that fantastic comic book realm again.
Yeah.
And then, you know, somehow or another, that certainly fed into the development of what we're seeing with the explosion of Marvel Comics properties and everything else.
And even the revitalization of the Turtles. I mean, there was a time for a while where the Turtles were not on the forefront of everyone's minds, and now there's Turtle everything again. So,
yeah, I don't think Turtles have achieved just yet. They're not a Superman, but people say to me a lot. Again, I've lived with the entire Turtle cycle now. 1989.
Right.
So I've seen its ups and downs. And people say to me now, hey, the Turtles are back. Or the Turtles, and I say to them now, I go, you know, the Turtles have reached that point culturally where they're now ever present. Mm-hmm. They're not going away anymore. They are around like Batman, Superman. There will always be some iteration of Ninja Turtles in some way, whether they've got a movie being made or not. And every once in a while, something will it's just there. Everybody in the world knows what Ninja Turtles are now. You know?
And kind of speaking of your, you know, again, like you said, you've been present for the Turtles, since kind of the Turtles became the live action Turtles. In the second film, is there, like, I guess, a favorite scene that you were part of? Is there something that sticks out as your mind as your favorite part that you filmed in that film?
One of my favorite parts in the filming of the second Ninja Turtle movie was just based on my own sense of self-accomplishment. There was a moment when Splinter tells any turtle who's being reprimanded to do backflips.
Right.
They'll say, 25 backflips now. And the turtles will go off and do the backflips. Well, at the end of the movie, it ends with all the turtles needing to do a backflip. Or should I say, technically a back handspring. And you really had to have your stuff together to be able to do a back handspring in a Ninja Turtle suit. Ernie Reyes was maybe one or two people who could do it on the first movie. And then when the second movie rolled around, one or two of the stunt guys could do it. Well, somebody needed to do it for Raphael, and the only other people available in Raphael costumes were not able to do a backflip.
Right.
So I wanted to do it, or a back handspring. I wanted to do it, and I never had done one before. So during the course of the movie, I'm training how to do a back handspring, how to do a back handspring, how to do it. Then I'm practicing with the shell on, and then doing the whole thing. And then finally, at the end of the movie, I'm the one that gets to go out there and do the back handspring. And I think that's how they freeze frame the final movie. And ultimately, for me, when I look at it, when you look at the back handspring, you can see that Raphael's is probably about the worst in the moment that they freeze frame it. But the thing is, I did it. I was in a Ninja Turtle suit, and I turned a complete back handspring. I was like, well, that's about as action hero as it gets right there. So
right.
I'm totally satisfied with that.
The end of the second movie is, being a kid growing up with that. I absolutely wore that VHS out as a kid.
Yep. I learned that as I've traveled around, I learned that over and over. And that's why ultimately I made a movie called Adventures of Johnny Dow that I wrote and directed. And making that movie was a little bit based on the fact that I constantly heard that the Ninja Turtle movies were like virtual babysitters for parents. They're like, oh, we put that movie in the VCR and we just walk away. And it's like, and they've watched it 20 times. I'm like, okay, so what a great, it just gets imprinted. Sometimes I question their parenting, but at the same time, I'm super happy that they're allowing the property to be shown.
Right. So kind of moving past the second film, was there a particular reason, or was it just because they just made choices that weren't, involving some of the original actors from the first two films? Was there a reason you weren't in the third film?
I was not in the third film because I had moved to Los Angeles and was actually acting and starring in another movie where I got to play a human being.
Oh, can't really blame you on that choice.
No. I got to go make a movie called Showdown that I starred in along with Billy Blanks, and it got released in theaters, played in theaters in America. It was probably one of the most widely played movies on cable for a while. I was part of that early 90s independent martial arts movie push that was out there.
Right. Of the first two films, from a watching standpoint, which one do you enjoy more?
Oh, that's tough. Let me think about that for a second.
I ask the hard questions. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. It's like a real Sophie's Choice question, unfortunately.
I think I enjoy watching the first movie more often because it's more iconic.
Right.
Or let me say that. I think I enjoy watching the first movie more because it's a more iconic film and sort of set the tone for what the Turtles could and should be. I think as it moved into the second film and then ultimately the third, certainly the tone changed. There were actually a couple of rules about what could take place on camera in the second movie that were not there in the first movie. For instance, in the second movie, when you see anybody get knocked down by the Turtles, they never are still. They're always constantly moving so that they don't appear to be dead in any way, but only stunned in some way.
Right.
Secondly, in the second movie, none of the Turtles ever use their weapons to fight. The only time the weapons ever come out is in the opening scene when Leonardo puts his swords up in the ceiling and Michelangelo uses some pepperoni as nunchucks.
Right.
Outside of that, Turtles never use their weapons in a fight. which, seems crazy, but
so that was actually that was actually on purpose.
Yeah, that was a specific mandate so that we could avoid getting a higher rating from the Motion Picture Society. They didn't want to risk getting a PG-13, I believe, or R. I don't remember what. I wasn't privy to those conversations, but that was a mandate at the beginning. If you get knocked down as a bad guy, you keep moving, and the choreography was, nope, we can't pull the swords out. Nobody's getting cut, stabbed, nothing.
Right, because I mean, in the first film, it's a much darker film, just tonally. So, that's
there's totally different feels about the two films. The first film was directed by Steve Barron, who directed the Billie Jean video with Michael Jackson, amongst other things. So he was a combination of kind of choreographer and director with an artistic sensibility, and was given, $8 million and the Muppets to make some stuff happen. The second movie was directed by Michael Pressman, who directed Dr. Detroit, and had much more of a sort of a slapstick feel about it. I always refer to the first one as the original, and then the second one is always a little bit more like the Four Stooges.
Right.
And then the third one just becomes just sort of a crazy, chaotic mess.
It's like sci-fi to some extent because they're going back in time and all sorts of kind of wacky stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Aside from Raphael, which of the turtles is your favorite?
When it comes to who my favorite turtle outside of Raphael is, I'm too close and unable to differentiate the performers that I know are the turtles.
Right.
And so when I see a Ninja Turtle, I don't see the character that's created for the screen. No matter whether it's a cartoon or the movie or wherever it is, if I see Michelangelo, I see Michelin Sisti or Nick Palmer, who is his stunt guy. If I see Donatello, I see Lee Tilden. If I see Leonardo, I see Mark Costa from the number 2 and number 3 movies. So all those guys felt very much to me like my own special forces squad in the military. So they're all kind of brothers. So every turtle to me is equal, but Raphael is certainly the best.
Right. And I love all of them, but I have a soft spot for Donatello and Raphael because Raphael just always seemed to be like the one who just didn't take no shit from nobody. And I always say Raphael's a turtle with a bad attitude. Oh, yeah. He's a very bad attitude turtle.
So let's see. Appearances or shows coming up. I actually have a show coming up. I'll be making an appearance at Fandom Fest in Louisville, Kentucky, August 7th to the 9th. We're going to be at the Kentucky International Convention Center. It's a great show. It's been going on 10 years. We're actually having a turtle convention at that show. I think Ernie Reyes is going to be there. Several of the other turtles, Lee Tilden, Michelin Sisti, Nick Palma, the list goes on. I know a lot of other people from the movie as well. So I've got the Fandom Fest coming up August 7th to the 9th in Kentucky. Outside of that, I just spent this past weekend in Tulsa at the Tulsa Comic Expo. Outside of that, I think that's about it. Other than that, in addition to making appearances at those shows, basically I'm hanging out as a marketing consultant. I get to write and direct television commercials. And that's it, man. That's all I got, really.
All right. So let's talk about let's talk about the turtles a little bit more. I think that because the film is not as dark, I think it does kind of change the way Raphael is portrayed, but not in a bad way. I think the fact that he's less brooding and kind of mopey a little bit works better with these 4 turtles.
Yeah, in this one he's more arrogant than he is, like, angry.
Right. And I mean, he goes off with Kino at one point to kind of infiltrate the Foot, which, in my mind is just kind of the whole, I don't know, that's just kind of his character in a nutshell. He's just like, I'm just going to go do it, type kind of turtle in this film, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So
action over caution.
Yeah, which kind of sticks with his character throughout the rest of the films, which isn't a bad thing. I think that the voice performers who did the Turtles this time around, obviously, Robbie Rist still does Michelangelo, Brian Tochi does Leonardo, but the other 2 are different this time around. And I really like the guy who does the voice of Donatello, Adam Carl. And Raphael also really sticks out to me as kind of another huge plus for the film. And again, the voice actors for those 2 change throughout all 3 films. Mm-hmm. Because obviously Corey Feldman does the voice in 1 and 3, and then he doesn't do it in 2.
For whatever reason.
Yeah, for whatever reason. What did you guys think of Paige Turco as April O'Neil?
We already kind of talked about this. I liked Paige Turco better. She's more sort of happy, but also sort of exasperated with the turtles, because at this point they're living in the second movie. They're living in her apartment, right? That's this one.
Well, yeah, they are in like halfway through the film.
Yeah, no,
and then they get her house burned down in the first one,
right? But
in the second one, she's living with them. Yeah,
right, because she gets an apartment, but they haven't found a new place in the sewer, so she's like cleaning up after 4 teenagers and being that sort of almost motherly, like talking to herself under her breath, but also.
I mean, that's what I kind of took it as, is she was like their de facto mom,
right?
Which I never got from the comics.
No, I didn't.
Or the cartoons.
Mm-mm.
But I kind of liked her in that kind of role.
Mm-hmm. Though it does make it a little weird that Mikey is like constantly hitting on her.
Well, I mean, that's present throughout all of them.
Yeah, but the added concept.
At least he doesn't say he can feel his shell tightening. Just saying.
But it does add a weird sort of atmosphere to it if you think about it too much, like we do about everything, that she acts as his mom and also he wants to bone her.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, just saying, if they remain mostly turtles, a turtle dick is like half the size of a turtle itself.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't want none of that.
No, stay away, April O'Neil. Go hang out with Casey.
Or Keno. We haven't even talked about Keno yet. So Ernie Reyes Jr. plays Keno, and he's the delivery boy that kind of happenstance runs into the turtles.
Right, because he delivers to April O'Neil's place all the time because the turtles order pizza all the time.
Because that's all they eat.
Right. And then he's like on a delivery with a shitload of pizza for them, and he sees the guys in the little shopping mall thing doing the robbery. So he goes in to try and stop them because he thinks there's like 4, and he's like a big hero character type personality.
I mean, he beats the shit out of all of them.
Right, he beats the shit out of the 4 guys, and then all the other like 36 of them come out of the other rooms, and then the turtles show up to save him because they were waiting for him to deliver the pizza.
And the look on his face, he's like, help?
And then Raph like shoves him into a trash can.
Yeah, he shoves him like ass first into a trash can after like covering him up with a sheet. The way the turtles show up in the second movie is pretty great. They like jump off of like trampolines behind him.
And end up in front of him.
Yeah. They straight jump over him.
Oh, man. And then all the robbers are like, huh? What? What's this? What's going on? What are these things?
Fighting these turtles.
Okay. Because they're not even Foot Clan. It's not like they're aware.
No, they're just like mooks.
Right. That for some reason decided to join a gang of 40 dudes with pantyhose over their head and rob a shopping mall.
Right? What are you, night security? I really like Ernie Reyes Jr. in this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, his character is a really good sort of
foil?
No, his character is a good connector for the human audience watching the movie.
Yeah, take notes, Michael Bay. This is how you do it.
Actual human reactions to things?
Yeah, I mean, like, he is a somewhat flawed character. He's similar to Raphael in that he's a headstrong.
Oh, yeah.
I guess he's supposed to be like a teenager.
No, he is, yeah.
Yeah.
I'd probably say he's probably like 17, maybe 16.
Yeah, almost.
He's supposed to, because the turtles are 15. I would assume, since he's like working as like a pizza delivery boy, he's probably at least 16.
Yeah, because he can drive.
Yeah. But I mean, you put it perfectly.
In your dreams. Yeah, if I dream, I'll dream a little thinner. Damn.
Got him, coach.
Damn. Got him, coach. Shit.
I mean, Ernie Reyes Jr. does a good job. Like, you put it right when it's like that's how you have characters interact. Especially his interactions with Raphael, because Raphael ends up playing he ends up being a loner type of a character anyway, headstrong but independent, and that melds and gels really well with Keno.
Yeah, and they actually form fucking relationships.
Yeah.
Again, like in the first one.
Yeah.
Interactions with each other and real relationships.
Yeah. What is that? So, like I said, I actually got to meet Ernie Reyes Jr. and sit down and talk with him in person about the the turtle, kind of how the turtles affected him, and working on the first and second film
in like a taco shop, right?
Yeah, in Torchy's Tacos back in back home. So bear with us. The audio is not as great as normal because I recorded it on my phone, but it's still an awesome interview, and it was awesome to get to sit down with someone who I'd seen 1,000 times on screen as a kid. So we'll play that interview, and when we get back, we'll talk about the villains in the second film. Prior to being in TMNT 1, where you played Donatello in the stunt suit,
yeah,
what was kind of your exposure to the Turtles?
You know what? I had my younger brother Santino was a fan of the Turtles, so I was aware of the Turtles because I think it was the Christmas prior to working on the first movie. I knew that he was a Turtle fan, and I had bought him for Christmas the toys and all that, so I was aware of the Turtles,
right?
But that was it. It was just through my younger brother. And then I got a call from Pat Johnson, who was the stunt coordinator and fight choreographer for the original Karate Kid, who I'd known since I was competing in martial arts.
Right.
And he called me up and said, hey, you want to work on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles? And I was just like, what? And yeah, you're going to be in the costume and do stunts. And I hadn't worked since really, I had the TV show Sidekicks. That was mid-'80s, and then this was like the late '80s, '89. So it was about 4 years had gone by that I had really done anything. And I was super excited, and when I went to, the first thing that I did on the first Turtles was they flew me to London to go to Jim Henson's
to get fitted.
Yeah, workshop. And when I flew to London and I was at Jim Henson's, where I was like, this is super cool. Like you can't beat Jim Henson.
Right. Did you get to meet Jim Henson?
I didn't, but I became pretty close friends with his son,
Brian Henson.
Yeah. Over the course of the first two movies. But,
I can only assume what that workshop looks like.
Oh, it's just incredible.
Stuff everywhere, all sorts of puppets from everything.
Yeah. And you just can't, you're just like...
Right. You've seen it on screen, but seeing it in real life is something else.
Yeah.
That's what Leif was telling me, that the creature from Neverending Story, like the head was there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Man, I can't even imagine.
Yeah. It's like... and so I knew, being part of that first movie.
The fact that the Hensons are involved in anything, kind of elevates it above just like some dudes with a puppet making out of the back of their truck.
Exactly. I knew that I was part of something special.
Right.
You're like... And then when we started filming and all that, then it was like... it was incredible. It was a lot of hard work on that first movie.
Right.
For everybody that was involved. For me, I was in the suit all day long doing fight scenes like 12, 14 hours a day.
So you had the dummy head on, right?
I had the dummy head.
It wasn't the servo head?
No. I had the dummy head on. But we were fighting all day long.
Right.
Fight scenes.
So how much was what you did, and how much did Leif do?
Well, all the fight stuff
was you.
Is me, yeah. And all the other stuff acting stuff was Leif. And that was a great combination because he's awesome, and he was so great as Donatello.
He's a cool guy.
Yeah, he's a cool guy. He brought all those guys brought them to life. The Hong Kong guys were interesting to work with.
So I've heard.
Yeah.
A lot of them didn't speak English, right?
They didn't speak English, so
they were getting hurt all the time.
Yeah, there was. Well, that's how I got in on the Turtles. There were 4 guys that from Hong Kong. As you know, Golden Harvest was a production company who's famous for Bruce Lee and Jet Li and Jackie Chan, and I was, as a martial artist, that was like really the biggest
that they were involved.
It wasn't even about the Turtles. I was like, Golden Harvest? Are you kidding me?
And that's great that they were involved.
I think that it at that time
legitimized it.
Because they were like they were making a martial arts movie.
Right.
Even though they had puppets and all these other things involved, they were making a martial arts movie. You had a company that was absolutely top tier when it comes to martial arts movies. Like, as sounding boards or whatever, they weren't going to do something that wasn't great.
Right.
And one of the guys hurt his back during pre-production, and that's how I got brought in at the last minute. But, you know, for me, all I kept thinking about was, this is the company like Bruce Lee. Like, I want to work with Golden Harvest, you know. But yeah, I mean, all the actors, including Leaf, and then all the stunt guys in that first movie. I mean, it was a combination of all those things to pull it together. Yeah, Jim Henson, you know, because you take it from a comic book and a cartoon, and you're like, okay, live action, that can go bad in so many ways.
Right.
I mean, that can go really bad really easily, you know. And you have to pull off the martial arts, you know.
How hard was it to do that? Suits?
I mean, it was incredibly hard.
Yeah.
It was. I mean, I was exhausted. I mean, fortunately, I was 18 years old, so it was like
full of energy.
Yeah,
right?
full of energy. But as an 18-year-old kid who'd been doing martial arts my whole life, I was exhausted at the end of it.
You're saying you were exhausted when you were 18. I can only imagine.
I mean, it was tiring. I mean, there's no two ways about it. You know, it was like 100 degrees outside, and it's like 100% humidity in North Carolina, doing fight scenes all day long. I mean, it was. We weren't doing like, you know, it was action all day long.
Right.
Because we were on a second unit mostly.
Gotcha.
So we were constantly.
So they were filming kind of all the other stuff separate or in tandem with you guys?
Yes.
How long was the shoot?
It was about 3 months.
That's not bad.
Yeah.
See, is that normal length?
Mm-hmm. Well, normal length for them.
Yeah. Versus now?
Well, I don't know. I mean, now you have, I mean, because it was a smaller budgeted film, but it was still like big in scope.
Right, yeah.
You know?
I mean, the suits and all that alone.
Yeah, you had a lot going on. I mean, so that nowadays is a Michael Bay $200 million movie. Right? So
we can get to that at some point.
So, you know, there was a lot going on. It was still a big production, even though the budget was small.
Right.
So
how many people did it take to operate all the suits?
Oh, I don't know.
So you were in it.
Well, I had one, you know. Then you had Leaf, and then you had the person that was controlling the servo. You know, I mean, there was like 3 or 4 people like per each character.
So with your suit, it was just you, and then you were just interacting with the stuntmen.
Yeah.
The other stuntmen.
Yes. Most of the time, yeah.
And how was your range of vision?
There was nothing. It was like
the little slit above the bandana or below the bandana.
I mean, it was like
it's a miracle that the films exist. To be perfectly honest, if you think about it, right?
Yeah, I mean,
like your field of vision being like a little slit under the bandana.
It was really crazy, but it was like, you know, it was like movie magic. I mean, it really was.
So, I mean, is that the hardest thing you've ever done, having to work in those suits? Choreographing in the suits?
Yeah, probably. As far as physical labor,
yeah,
it was. I mean, because, you know, your body temperature gets up to like 102 degrees every day. I mean, when you go to work, at least for me, like when I would go in every day, it was like you knew you had to like psych yourself up for a days of work. You know?
How long did it take you to get into the suit?
I can't remember exactly, but it was something like, well, I don't know, 45 minutes or so, you know. I mean, you get, as time goes on, you start to, you know.
Boom, boom.
Yeah, get used to it. But in the beginning, it was.
So, what was it like standing in front of a mirror, being in the turtle suit?
It was crazy.
Yeah.
It was crazy. I mean, first of all, you're like 100 pounds more muscular.
Right, of course.
than you normally. Yeah, I'd be like, so this is what I would look like if I was like super buff.
Right. And a turtle.
And a turtle.
And a turtle. Because I can only imagine like the coolest Halloween costume ever, right?
Yeah, it was crazy. But it was a lot of fun, man. Those are like golden moments of my life.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like 18 years old, away from home for the first time,
playing a turtle,
playing a turtle, hanging out with the coolest like people. You know.
How many of the people on the main cast did you interact with? Did you interact with like Judith Hogue or Elias?
Yeah, in the first movie, a little. I didn't really deal with those guys too much. So it was mostly the crew and the cast, like not so much the actors from the first one.
Right. Because you're in the second unit, right?
Yeah. And so you really didn't have too much interaction with them. Other than when, like, Elias, fight rehearsals and stuff like that. We got to hang out. That was cool. And then obviously in Secret of the Ooze.
Everybody.
Everybody else. So it was cool to come back the second, because we filmed them back-to-back summers.
Right, because they wanted them like a year. Came out a year apart.
Yeah, I mean, we did the one,
which is practically unheard of in this day and age.
Yeah, for sure, especially when it's not slated that way.
Right.
It's like we made the movie, it came out, it was a blockbuster success, and then we were
go back right
to it this following summer.
Right, normally you can't do that with Marvel movies now. Like
normally you film a summer and then they come out that next summer.
Right.
We were actually filming the sequel the next summer.
Yeah.
So we went back to the same small town that we just came from. A huge success. Now everybody has seen the Turtles.
Right.
And there was a good amount of people that came back as well.
Right.
You know what I mean? Which was really cool. And I was happy to be out of the suit. Yeah.
So how did that transition happen?
So
that's a big question, right?
Yeah. So I became. So yeah. I mean, Golden Harvest, like I said, was those guys, Tom Gray and not Raymond Chow, but there was another producer is slipping my name right now, which I feel really bad about. But the guys from Golden Harvest, they're the ones that are really responsible for taking me out of the suit.
What was the kind of the reasoning for taking you out?
Well, I don't know. It's like I think that there maybe was a plan to do more stuff with me, more films.
Because you're like one of the best parts of the second movie. Your character.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that really, and I can't say, exactly speak for them, but I met those guys, and I was a huge fan of Golden Harvest. I know everyone has their different stories about it, whatever. For me personally, I'm like, I don't care what anybody says. This is like where Bruce Lee. These are the people that made Bruce Lee. So I became really good friends with them, and I was an American kid, like as all American as you could possibly get, and because of my dad, my martial arts skills were up to par with what they were used to seeing, as people that were the best, in what they do in their genre. And so, I was just happy that Golden Harvest saw me and thought, let's get him out of the costume and make him into a real character.
Your character in the film is not in any other stuff, turtle stuff, up to that point.
Yeah.
So he's a purely created for the film character.
Yeah.
Which is awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. And
it almost kind of seems like it was written for you. I don't know.
Oh no, it was definitely.
Yeah. Right.
Well, when we finished the first movie, Tom Gray told me we're going to bring you back he told me specifically we're going to bring you back as a character.
As you.
Yeah. As me.
Yeah. Not you in the Donnie suit.
Not me in the Donnie suit. Me and the guy that was picking up girls at Hooters in North Carolina. 18 years old. That kid. We're bringing out that guy.
I was in the Donatello suit. Teenage Ninja Turtles. What's up? How's it going?
Girls, which one of you is getting a ride with me tonight? That guy.
I see. So these are real lines from real life.
Yes.
These are not written lines.
No, those were from.
Maybe you're just a little thinner.
Yeah, those were my pickup lines to the girls at Hooters.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, did you enjoy working on the first one or the second one more? Or was it different?
It was totally different.
Yeah.
I mean, both of them were great, but the first one was as great because it wasn't about me being an actor and all of that. It was just being part of something, and then
martial arts.
And it's all about the martial arts, and then it was about being part of something like behind the scenes, you know, I like that aspect of things too. And then the fact that it became wildly successful.
I don't know if it wasn't not going to be though.
I mean, but I didn't, you know, I mean, coming into it, it's
when you were on the set of the first film, was there kind of a feeling in the air that it was going to be a success?
I felt like so. You know, when we were there, I was like, this is going to be a hit. This is going to be like...
Because the Turtles were established at that point.
Yeah.
But the cartoon...
Yeah, the cartoon was already out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I had that feeling, and I had worked on stuff where I didn't have that feeling. You know, where you're like, is this going to be...
Bye-bye career.
Yeah, bye-bye career. It's just going to be... So it was awesome to be part of something like that, and then have it just be... Because that first movie, remember, like, at the end of that first movie, kids were being found in manholes in New York, like, searching for the turtles. It was mania.
Right.
It wasn't just like how it was nowadays where, oh, the numbers are big. I mean, it was like... Insanity, you know? So it was a different kind of feeling. And then the second movie, you couldn't, that was probably the greatest role that I've had so far, as far as just being part of something that's so big and successful, and the audience reaction to that character. I mean, it was just, when we did we had the premiere at Universal, and it was the Universal, their Omniplex or whatever it was. Like, there wasn't even those kinds of, there weren't even megaplexes really. Right. Universal's was like one of the first ones, like 18 theaters or whatever. And when Paige and I came, like, I think we entered in on some, like, Cadillac or whatever on the red carpet or whatever. And they had at Universal, every theater, 18 theaters, filled with people for the premiere. There was not, like, a single thing. It was, like, all 18. And every star and their family were there. And it was like, this is, like, the craziest. Right. I mean, this is, like, it made it. Yeah, and it was just, like, craziness. Yeah, you could definitely say that you made it. Like, you're like, okay, it doesn't get any bigger than this, you know? There's rumors that Steven Spielberg was, you know, somewhere floating around in the audience. I mean, it was crazy.
I mean, in kind of a way, Turtles 1 and Turtles 2 are kind of a microcosm of your career as a whole, because one, you're an actor, and you're also a martial artist, so one is very martial arts, you in the suit, and the other one is you as the actor. So I think that's kind of, you know, your career as a whole. This is your acting career, this is your martial arts career, right? Yeah. Which is kind of awesome.
It was, and what's even more awesome is that 25 years later, as I'm beginning to kind of travel around to different comic book and toy conventions all across the country, people are so excited about the films 25 years later. My participation in it, Kino character, it's like it still exists. Right. You know, and now... Which is great. Which is awesome. And when I go, you know, to teach martial arts, you know, mostly I kind of teach kids and stuff, and it's like they'll introduce me, and like none of the kids, all the kids, you know, 7, 8 years old will be looking up at me, and it's like they don't know, have a clue who I am. And the parents are just like, dude, Ninja Turtles. I'm like, so wait, which one's the Ninja Turtle family?
I study martial arts? Yeah. Like, oh my god. Oh man.
So it's very cool to see.
Yeah, because people my age are having kids now. So
like, and their kids are watching the cartoon on Nickelodeon, and
or their parents are showing them.
And the parents are, and I'll tell you, I come up and I see these 7, 8 year old kids, and I'm like, they're looking at me, and not all of them, but you know, like, so have you seen the original movies? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, you must have some pretty cool parents, and like they're showing you the original. But, you know, now you have a whole new generation of kids who love the Nickelodeon cartoon. I think that what they're doing with the IDW comics are awesome.
Insane, but awesome.
Yeah, insane. But
Killing off Donatello.
yeah.
Man, when I saw that, ooh, boy. I mean, he's going to come back because it's a comic book.
Yeah,
but
still, I mean, that's big.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Especially considering that's my favorite turtle. But that's a different story.
Yeah. So, you know, it's just to be part of something like that like is still around 30 years later, and it seems to be like, for me, I hadn't talked about even the Ninja Turtles for a while, and then all of a sudden there's just like this wave, you know, of Ninja Turtles all over again. So to be part of that is just, to me, incredible, really. It's just incredible.
I grew up with the Turtles, and I guess it never kind of went away for me. So it's a pop culture thing. It's one of the few things that has endured, like Star Wars, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Star Trek. Yeah. It's a franchise that is wildly successful.
Yeah. I mean, and I feel honestly really lucky to be part of it. I'm like, you know, your career, you know, from when I was there, in my early days, and then I became like a teenager, and like, you know, when I was a kid, I was playing, you know, I was always smaller and younger looking than I actually was, so I was always playing younger roles, and then I became a teenager, and I was like, you know, what's going to happen? Can I really make a transition? Right. And it's like, being part of that, it's just, I just feel really lucky to be part of it. I'm like, okay, you can't, at least when it's all said and done, like, you were part of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and really you can't get anything cooler than that, so you're good.
Right, I totally agree. You're good. One of those things where you're on screen as a turtle, and then with the turtles, which is like the trifecta, or not even just a double threat of just amazingness.
Oh, I mean, when I got to the scene where we were in April's apartment, and Splinter was telling me the backstory of the turtles, and you know, I think it was like Michelangelo or something. Yeah, and all the cool ones,
and you know,
and whatever. Like, that scene was my favorite scene of the second film, because I was just like, inside, I was like blown away.
You're
I was
there
like,
for that.
Now I'm like out of the suit, listening to Splinter, and I've got the turtles all around me, and I'm just like, I really was in awe. Like, I looked back because I saw a picture of a screenshot of that scene a few weeks ago, and I'm like looking at Splinter like, what? You know what I mean?
And that was actually
happening. I was just like, this is really happening. This is so cool. Like, I'm like hanging with turtles in the Splinter. Like, nobody can say they do that. You know, I'm like, nobody else can say that they were taught by Splinter other than me.
Yeah.
And the turtles, of course.
Yeah.
You know.
Was that kind of the feeling with the other actors on the set? That there's like, this is how awesome this is to be involved?
I don't know, honestly. Like, I know it was a lot of hard work.
Right, obviously.
And I don't know what everybody, but that was what I was thinking. I was just like, this is cool. I was 18 years old too, so it's like, you know.
That's a hell of a thing to be working on when you're 18 years old.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot going on.
Right.
You know? But I appreciate it probably a lot more. I was excited then, but I'm a lot more, I guess, appreciative of being part of it now, as I'm a dad, and like, you know what I mean? Like, my kids, this morning, I had posted I went to Wizard World in Vegas last weekend.
Right.
And they had, you know, the turtles there, and I took a picture with them.
Which I saw, which is awesome.
Yeah, and so I was laying in bed with my son, who's 2 years old, this morning, and I was going through emails and stuff, and he was kind of groggy waking up, and then somehow I got on Instagram, and he saw the pictures, and he was like, turtles? Daddy turtles? Daddy turtles? And I'm like, That's just awesome.
Just wait.
I can't.
Wait till you grow up and you realize all the crazy stuff. Does he know that you were?
Nah, he doesn't. I mean, he kind of gets it, but my daughter, who's 7, gets it clearly. And I actually FaceTimed her with the Turtles, and I was like, I've got to do this. Like, I was like, that's all I could keep thinking about. As soon as I saw the Turtles, I was like, I've got to FaceTime Lotus. And I'm like, hey, guess who Dad's hanging out?
Oh, man. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Are your kids fans of the Turtles?
Yeah.
They have to be, right?
Yeah, they have to be.
No choice. And their favorite movie is the second one.
Yeah.
No questions asked.
Well, and it was funny because when we were at the Alamo Draft House, my daughter came along with me, and James, the programmer over at the DFW Alamo, in front of the audience, was asking my daughter a couple of questions, and she was like, so did you like the movie Last Dragon? And it was the first time she had ever seen that movie, and on the big screen, so that was cool. And then she's like, have you seen a movie called Surf Ninjas? And she was like, yeah. Have you seen Secret of the Ooze? She was like, yeah. And I was like, it's so cool that my kids get to share in that. Like, that to me is, like, at the time of making those movies, I could have never expected that was going to be the best part of it for me, was the fact that I could, that my kids would be into Turtles, and that I could say that I was part of it. I mean, that's the coolest thing for me to, like, even now I have, like, the gear and whatever, and it's like my kids love that, you know? And it's one of the best things about it is that they're back and my kids are into it. I wasn't even thinking about having kids, you know, when we were making those movies. So that's super cool.
So kind of what was it like working with like David Warner and Paige Turco when you were, obviously, first movie you were in the suit, second movie you're out of the suit. So kind of what was that like, getting to actually like interact with a lot of the
It was great. Yeah. I mean, she was great. She's awesome. I love her. She was always super cool to me, you know, and I was like, it's April now.
Right.
You can.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
I mean, there was a difference, obviously, because it went from Judith to Paige or whatever. But, I mean, for me...
I think that they suit each of the movies pretty well. The first movie is pretty dark.
Yeah, the first movie is dark.
The second movie, that first scene...
Yeah.
The first scene sets the tone of the entire movie.
Yeah.
Hitting them with yo-yos and the which is great.
Yeah.
But, I mean, like, that sets the tone for the second movie. You realize this is a completely different movie.
Yes. And I think they fit the and I love both of them for that. I love the first movie because it really was a dark movie. And it really...
It's closer to the comic, but still not the comic. Whoa, that wouldn't fly. That would be like an R-rated movie. Like, Raphael gets like his arm cut off or something, right? One of the turtles gets like an eye patch. In the comic books, like the 80s comics, it was strange.
Yeah.
So.
But yeah, it was awesome, and she's like gorgeous, and she's April O'Neil, and I'm her pal, like delivering pizzas to her, and like, what more can an 18-year-old kid ask for? Hanging out with the turtles and delivering pizzas to April's apartment. Like, it was, I mean, literally, it's just golden moments. You know, and you can't, every time I think about those films, every time I talk about those films, there's nothing but like
happiness.
Yeah, it's just like you can't, it's like graduating high school, like all of that, like just in one like
singular moment.
Yeah. Just.
What about David Warner? He's like David Warner is, you know.
Yeah.
I'm so surprised he's in it because the clout that he has, like now. I mean, Tron and
and I wasn't really, you know, at that time period of I just knew that he was the serious actor. That's all I knew. I was like, he's the real actor.
He's the one. He's the guy they brought in to legitimize everything.
Yeah, he's the guy that they brought in to balance out
all the craziness.
You know, so he was very serious the whole time. You know? And I didn't really have that many scenes with him. I think there was a couple where we were
stirring the pizza falls. Yeah, the pizza falls in. Oh my god!
I mean, there's so many moments. It's like you can't even remember all of them.
That movie, Turtles 2, hands down one of my favorite movies, and it's a movie growing up, I remember, like, we wore the VHS out. Like, I remember, like, the ads on the VHS before the movie. Like, and the cassette was, like, had had like the green thing on top. This was the black because it was turtles. I mean, it was just wore the VHS out. I mean, it's just one of those movies that kids my age just. You say turtles. I mean, and now that we're like all a bunch of nerds, like which one was better, the first one or the second one? The second one. I'll go down. I know some of my writers will tell me the first one. They're wrong. The second one's better. Always. The second one's more fun. That's more fun turtles. I don't want the boring turtles that angry at each other all the time.
I mean, the first one was good for its own. It had its own thing happening, you know? It kind of stands by itself.
The second one, they get to use meat nunchucks. I mean, come on. Like, sausage is nunchucks? I mean, they cool.
So, it was great times, and I'm really just... You know, it's I've just been experiencing this wave of turtle mania again. Traveling, meeting fans all over the place that are just super excited about it, and it's just awesome to be part of it. I mean, there's nothing else I can say.
I mean, again, I think that I think that Ernie Reyes Jr. as Keno is a perfectly acceptable, and I didn't know that he replaced Casey Jones. I didn't know that that was the intent of that character. But I think he's a more likable character than Casey Jones.
Yeah, and I think that it has to do just with them making The Secret of the Ooze a much more kid-friendly film.
Lighthearted.
Lighthearted, definitely. I was actually perusing some of the trivia stuff, and apparently the choice to make the second film kid-friendly was incredibly intentional because for some reason there was like a huge amount of backlash from parents about the first film, which is why we don't see them use their weapons in the second one.
Which is surprising considering how the first film really isn't that violent.
Yeah, and I think we've already talked about that a little bit, but yeah, that's incredibly surprising.
I'm not sure how people punching people is any better than people hitting someone with like a stick.
Yeah,
and then seeing them roll around on the ground so that you know they're not dead.
Yeah.
I mean, even like, this film's rated PG, isn't it?
Yeah, well, they're both rated PG.
Well, yeah, like it's...
The new TMNT movie's rated PG-13. Congrats.
Yeah, way to go. Way to push the boundaries, Michael Bay.
He's pushing all of them, bro.
Man, we haven't even talked about that movie, and he's catching so much shit.
Yeah. As he should. I really like Keno, and Ernie and I talked about this a little bit. It's really strange that Keno as a character never shows up in anything else.
Right? They don't even, like, mention him in the third one.
No, in the third one, they're like, oh, Keno's off doing something, or Keno's off training.
Do they say that?
No, they never say that.
Right.
Which really bums me out.
At least in Hellboy 2, they give what's his name, a one-liner out the door.
Yeah, he's out fucking around in Alaska or something. You got him sent there.
Yeah, like they don't do anything. There's like no mention in the second film of why Casey Jones is gone. And then when we come back to the third one, Casey Jones is back. There's no mention of where Keno is.
Which really bums me out.
Yeah,
because I wish Keno... I mean, I don't want to... I do/don't want to see him in the new movies because the new movies are... Ugh. But, I mean, they could introduce him in the cartoon. There is a highly successful cartoon going right now on Nickelodeon. Just introduce him. Or in the comics or something. Please. Just introduce Keno and I want to know what Keno's doing. Because that's really like one of the biggest loose threads of all the Turtles, like, media. Is what happened to Keno.
Because he's like a big part of the second one.
I mean, he's like the secondary character of the second film.
Right. It's not like he's the kid from the first one that steals stuff. He's like the main driving character of the second movie.
I mean, let's talk about some of the other kind of live. I guess how do I put this? Out of suit performers.
There you go.
David Warner as Dr. Perry, Professor Perry,
the scientist who made the goo.
Yeah, I mean that to me, David Warner, he's been in so much. He is a well-established, highly respected British actor, and I'm surprised that he was in this film. Yeah, as a kid, I didn't think anything of it, but knowing what I know now,
oh yeah, well, I mean, seeing David Warner and stuff like this, like that's like seeing like Jürgen Prochnow or Max von Sydow and stuff.
Yeah,
it's just like, oh, you're in this.
Yeah, I really like him in this movie.
Oh, I do too. It's a little strange. It's a tad bit strange if you're familiar with the comic books because they use Professor Perry as part of the origin of the Turtles. They differentiate.
As opposed to the aliens?
Yes, as opposed to the aliens that made the goo. If you're like a diehard comic book fan for TMNT, I guess it's a sour note, but it works for the story that they're telling, which I think is more important.
The trivia says there's a deleted scene that got taken out of the final cut of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, where the ending was supposed to reveal that Professor Jordan Perry was one of those brain aliens in a human suit.
Oh.
And they took it out because they thought it was a little too, complicated for a kid's movie.
Gotcha.
So the initial thing was it was going to be aliens.
Gotcha.
Just pretending to be
But they almost thought it was going to be too much like Krang.
Right. Because they're in the comics, the little brain aliens are the same thing that Krang is in the cartoon.
Yeah.
They're like little brain aliens with brain goo extensions that work as arms. And they were like, well, we should take this out because not only is it over the heads of children, but also, they'll think he's a bad guy, and that's not the intent.
Mm-hmm. Right. So let's talk a little bit about the villains in the film. What did you guys think about Shredder this go-round?
I think Shredder is a better character in this movie because he's in more. You see him interact better. He has more of a reason to hate the Turtles specifically.
Yeah, because they foiled him in the first one.
Right, and dropped him in a dumpster and closed the dumpster on him and fucked up his face.
Yeah.
Well, they fucked his face up even more.
Yeah, more than it already was because Splinter scratched him.
Right.
Yeah, that was a driving factor in the first film once you find out that Splinter is the guy that kills Splinter's owner. He calls him master, but I mean owner, whatever.
Yeah.
And Splinter fucks up his face a little bit, around his mouth, there's scarring near his mouth.
Yeah.
And then you see him in the second film, and he's got crazy animosity towards the Turtles now because his face is tore up.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and he got like we said, he got beaten.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Thrown off a roof.
Yeah. He did a half gainer. I like him. I think that he gets a little bit upstaged by my kind of undying love for Tatsu, who is just such a nuts character.
That's the bald lieutenant, right?
Yeah, the guy
his right hand man.
Oh yeah,
father, gone. Yeah. Oh my God, they will pay. Yeah,
I am in charge now.
I, Tatsu, now lead. Whoever challenge, step forward.
I challenge.
Holy shit.
Oh yeah,
his face. He upstages Shredder in this movie because he's just so kind of his character because Tatsu's in the first movie, which I totally didn't remember as a kid. In the first movie, he's just kind of like this one-off angry bald Japanese guy.
No, in
this
first
one
movie, he leads the Foot Clan in place of Shredder.
Yeah,
Shredder
but I mean, he doesn't
bad.
have much of a character.
Right, he doesn't emote very much.
Yeah, in this one, he's emoting and kind of I don't know. He gets beaten by all the turtles and whacking into him with their shells.
And then he does that little
wishbone crunch on 2.
He does that little Tweety bird chirp.
Yeah.
Thing.
I like Shredder and Tatsu, but obviously, for me, the real kind of highlights of the film, villain-wise, are Toka and Razor.
Right.
Which are essentially mutated versions of the turtles.
It's a wolf and a snapping turtle that Shredder gives the goo to.
Mm-hmm. With the help of kidnapped Dr. Perry, a.k.a. David Warner.
Right.
Do you guys think that if Toka and Razor had been allowed to hang around more, they would have ended up like the turtles, able to talk?
I think
mean, yeah,
so.
they can kind of talk.
Yeah, but I mean, actually, coherent speaking.
Well, yeah,
they're babies.
No, they're not babies, John.
They're babies.
Kill them both. Oh man,
Mama! Oh my God, that's the worst thing. A mutated 6 foot tall, crazy strong snapping turtle that's mutated.
That's just dumb.
That's dumb. It's just that's dumb and just croaking, "Mama!" Oh my God!
And they start whacking each other on the head with steel pipes,
And the steel pipes bend around their heads.
Yeah. Oh man.
Play! Master save Lein!
Oh my god.
They are again, like Kino, they are a original creation for the film.
Because it was supposed to be Bebop and Rocksteady, but then the writers Eastman and Laird specifically said they didn't think putting Tokar and they didn't think putting Bebop and Rocksteady in was a good idea, so they made 2 new ones.
Because Bebop and Rocksteady are like, they use guns, and they're not technically mutated animals; they're melded.
Right, they're humans with like DNA implanted in them.
Or I thought that they were humans that were like, merged with animals,
like street sharks.
Yeah. They're awesome. So we actually spoke with Mark Ginther, who was in the Razor suit. So we'll play that interview when we get back. We'll talk more about Toka and Razor and the kind of film in general.
First of all, how did you get involved with the franchise?
Ninja Turtles? Mm-hmm. Well, this goes way back, right? 1989? 88, 89, I should say.
Around there. I'm not sure off the top of my head.
Yeah. I got a call from one of the coordinators. He's one of the coordinators from Ninja Turtles 1. And they were doing open calls for these 2 new characters. And they were looking for some big guys, so I got the call for it. So I went down to Northridge, and there was a little karate studio there. And there's about 40 or 50 stunt guys that came in. They were doing basic auditions, forward rolls coming up and into a fighting stance. And watching everybody else as they were working, I was close to I was in the last third guys to go, and being really fairly new in the business also at the time. I did a dive roll. It came up and then the ki-eye, made a loud noise. You know what the ki-eye is, right? I'm sure you know martial arts.
Right.
And then I walked over to the side, and I was pulled to the side by Stephen Ho, who was already one of the Ninja Turtle doubles. He pulled me over and he says, "Hey, if you get a second audition, if you dive and you do such and such," he says, "you'll get a standing ovation from the producers." And this is somebody I've never met before. So he pulled me out of that crowd of everybody, and I'm like, "Oh, okay." So I got a second round, and so we had another kind of physical audition. And from that physical audition, we had a couple other physical things, dive rolls and stuff, and then we did a little fight scene with Pat Johnson, who was our coordinator at the time. And I remember doing like a 1-2-3 punch, and then he did a roundhouse. And when he did the roundhouse, I pretty much did a 1.5 gainer to my back. And as soon as I got up, and I had never, honest to God, I had never done anything like that before in my life, but I just knew I'm going big because of what Stephen Ho had said. And I did, landed it, I got up, and I did get that standing ovation. They got claps from everybody, and by the time I could walk out the door to my car, the producer came out and gave me the job. That's how I got Razor.
And what was your exposure to the Ninja Turtles before you were cast?
0. I didn't know anything about them. Right. And I believe I might have went and saw the first movie after I got cast to see what am I getting into here. And it turned out to be a great franchise and a lot of fun. I had some of my best time on that movie.
Had you done any work in like big sort of monster suits before?
Nope, I hadn't. Actually, Tom DeWeer, he's the one who gave me this call. Tommy, I met Tay before that. So I guess let's go back. Yes, I did. My very first movie I worked on was for Tom. Tom DeWeer was directing it. It's called Death by Dialogue, and I played the demon. And where I wore, they put a ball cap on me. They strapped my leg up. I had one leg and big sword, and I was just a bad guy in the whole show. And from there, Tom remembered me and was trying to get me involved in some of the little projects he was involved in. So when that call came up, that's how I got the call from Tom. So in the way of creature suits, being in suits and stuff, no, I'd never done that before. But Ninja Turtles spawned a lot of stuff for me. Once I got Ninja Turtles, got down there, I immediately flew over to England, and it was a day after Jim Henson had passed away. So it was really kind of a bummer, and I never got to meet Jim Henson, but the Henson crew was beyond phenomenal. It was like what you would imagine as a kid. You watch Disney, and you have Tinkerbell at the very, you see her come around, and you get a little Tinkerbell, and you go to watch the movie. It's on, your trailers. And that was the magic I always looked for from Disney, and I never really found that. But when I got over to England, and I opened the door going into the Hensons, it was like fairy dust. And it was just this chill you got over yourself, all over you, my goosebumps. And the way the guys worked over there, they worked hard for Henson's, and they had their own schedules. There was no one cracking the whip. They'd work long hours, but yet they would stop and play foosball. There's a foosball table there, there's stuff. So he left them to be creative, and they had their own directives, and they still got all the work done. And he did, Henson's do amazing work. So my involvement there, then I got over to Carolina, where we shot it, Ninja Turtles in Wilmington, Carolina. I had 6 weeks of mask training, which is basically bodysuit puppeteering, learning how to move a mask that has no animatronics in it, but make it come alive. So I had some great training. Pardon me?
That head didn't have any animatronics in it? That was all you doing?
No. The turtle, Razar did. At that time, he had more animatronics in him than any other head. It was 28 servos inside Razar. But for the 6 weeks of training, I was training without that head, with just a blank mask on, in which I had to make that mask come alive. And it's just small little movements you have to do with your head and your neck and how you tilt, which portrays that. So once I'm in the suit, now that's my portion of it. Then Gordy, who is my animatronics puppeteer, he's the one who brought the face to life. But if you don't have the movements, the little subtle movements of the head turn, the cock, the look up or down, that's what brings part of that feeling in. So that's what I trained in. So, because I physically wasn't doing the eye movements, I was a puppeteer.
Right.
So I did learned all the bodysuit puppeteering, raising your shoulders, lowering your shoulders for different moods. So that was an excellent training period for me.
Mm-hmm. And how did you sync up your movements with the mouth and eyes moving?
Well, there's a one-way speaker system in which I can hear Gordy, but he can't hear me. And from that initial training, from the mask with just a straight mask before we put the animatronic head on, we started to get a rapport because we were together every day. And once I put the mask on, the head on, it was not just straightforward, you're looking straight forward. The head was so large, and I was so tall with these 4.5-inch lifts, I had to look down. So everything I did, my head was cranked forward, and my chin was to my chest, basically, the way it had to sit on my head. So I had to then relearn all of them movements, trying to make it subtle, but not looking at you, but actually like talking to you from the top of my head. And from listening to Gordy would start to tell me stuff. Of course, I knew the scenes. I knew what was going on. And Gordy could see my reactions, and he kind of went off of me, and we started. The rapport was so well together, with me not being able to see. I was basically blind. I could only hear him, and he could see my movements. That's how it all kind of went through. And it got to be to where there was not even talking between us. It was, we would end up, I would go up to somebody and just to screw off, and Gordy would go right with it, and we would just play well. I think it's just from working together so long, when you start to learn each other. I know how Gordy, his humor was, I guess, and you could see how my body movement was, and it worked that way.
Gotcha. And how did you, if you were looking down like that and not able to see, how did you do all the fight scenes then?
Yeah, that was interesting. Well, if you imagine standing there and you're looking down and you've got a 3-foot circle around your feet, that's all I had. So a lot of my fighting I did with Nick Palma, who is Michelangelo's stunt double. We would work out the choreography, and I basically went off his feet. I could see where he was, and I would just know where he was going to be. So you work the choreography out, and it was just kind of a rapport. He can see me, I can see his feet, so I had to work off of that. Yeah. It was interesting, but it was a really good experience.
Mm-hmm. And what did it feel like in the suit?
Very hot. But the interesting thing about this suit, it was a latex suit, and it was quite thick. As you could see, the suit was quite thick. And it was like having an extra set of muscles on. So if I flexed my muscles, and the muscles outside, you would see them flex through the latex. That being said, if I pulled my arm in, it always wanted to go back out like a rubber band. So there was some of that little bit of a fighting there, but yet the way they designed the suits were a lot of people, and a lot of suits today, you still see it to where they're all like one piece. We had multiple pieces. So from my foot to my knee was one piece, and then from above my knee to my waist was another piece. This is for each leg. So there were seams, and you'll see as Razar, he's got cloth around his elbows and his knees. So that's how they designed it all, to give me more flexibility and more movement with it. So I didn't feel encumbered some at all. And during the shooting, we had two heads. I had a stunt head, which was very light, and animatronics, all of that. And then I had the animatronic head, which at that time was like $150,000 or something. It was an expensive head at that time. And there's a scene in the movie where I now grab onto Michelangelo and I spin him around in circles, and I throw him into the door. Well, I wanted to do it with the animatronic head, and because I've been comfortable with it. That's what I've been using the whole time. They wanted me to use the animatronic head, the stunt head. Well, the stunt head now, it fits in a certain way that I can't see down. Now I'm having to look out. Now I'm looking straight out and I'm spinning. I would much rather just be looking at my feet spinning than seeing just like a thin slit and then you just see everything moving. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that'd be a little...
Yeah, so we went, there was some meetings back and forth, and they finally let me do it because they're afraid I was going to fall with that expensive head on. And I ended up doing it with the head on through Michelangelo.
Mm-hmm. And do you have any like particularly interesting stories from the set that you remember that pop out in your mind?
No, I mean, just not even that interesting. I guess it was the interesting thing was the entourage that Vanilla Ice had when he came in. And at one point, the entourage hit one of the turtles in the face because the turtles were just being turtles. And, they just kind of get that stigma, like I'm bad and, this is the top guy in the world. And so the guy had the animatronic head on and they smacked him in the head with it. And the turtle was just being a turtle. You know how turtles are funny. They're supposed to be funny.
Right.
So that's one of the other things that really sticks out in my mind. There was one shot in this movie, and I've seen it quite a few pictures too, is Toka and Razar and I are out in this back lot and we're turning over cars. We're destroying the place. Yeah, Toka and I are going through the street and we're destroying the place to get everybody's attention. And I just turned over a car. And as I turned over the car, of course, I'm not actually physically turning the car over. It's turning over. I remember Gordy saying, turn. And I turned. And in the film, you'll see it looks like I hit it with my shoulder and turned it the rest of the way. But I never did. But the timing was perfect. I couldn't see it. And he just said, turn. And I turned to my left, and it looked like I hit the car with my shoulder. But we were stacked. We were away from it. So you'll see that beat of me turning, and it looks like I hit it with my shoulder as the car continues. That was the little story from the report that Gordy and I had.
That's cool.
Yeah. But the whole thing was a great experience. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really was.
So, are you working on anything right now that you'd like to talk about?
Well, the only thing I really can't talk too much about it is, this new project that's coming out. But I've been very fortunate. And just from Ninja Turtles, I got other projects from Ninja Turtles because of the work with the Hensons. I did Babylon 5, quite a few different characters, introduced characters on Babylon 5, which was a lot of prosthetics. And from there, they were doing a movie called Power Rangers. And the company I was working with at the time doing Babylon 5, the special effects company, they got the job. And Lord Zed came up. Well, John Bullis went right to the producer and says, I got the guy who can be Lord Zed. And that was because of my work from Henson's, what they taught me to do with the mask, and just my size. So I was Lord Zed on Power Rangers. I don't know if you know that or not.
I noticed that when I was doing some research on you just to familiarize myself. I mean, I watched Power Rangers when I was a kid.
Yeah, so that's how I got that job, and it all stemmed from, Ninja Turtles, the Hensons, the work I did with them, my training. Other people noticed that, and then I got jobs from that, and then, I did other suit work from there too, and that's Pat Johnson again called me back, who was the coordinator of Ninja Turtles. So on Batman and Robin, or Mr. Freeze, and there was Bane and Poison Ivy dressed up as pink gorillas. And if they come into their, I don't know if you remember the scene or not.
I do.
And then the pink gorillas, they go and they dance on the drums at the top, and then they reveal themselves. So that's me. I'm the pink gorilla doing the dancing in there.
That's very cool.
You just listened to part 1 of our Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles franchise Kulturecast. Make sure to check out part 2, which features interviews with David Allen Fraser and Gord Robertson, both who worked on TMNT 3, along with talks about TMNT 3 and the animated TMNT movie and the 2014 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie.